This is the Patriots Catch-22 podcast with Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
I'm Evan Lazar. Evan Lazar. Hello, everybody. Nailed it. Joined as always by our Barth. That's a fit. That's a match. No risk it, no biscuit.
22. Here is Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
Is the data skewed because in this one game he was struggling with this one receiver or this type of receiver that maybe we don't have? Like, again, okay, the right answer is not, okay, let's throw a million go balls at this guy. It's get me the cut-ups of all the go balls. Let's see why this is happening. And do we have the assets on our roster to be able to take advantage of this, yes or no?
I think that's exactly
okay, but
how they're using
I think there are some people, and maybe they're not really the coaches, but I think there are some people who look at analytics, who look at that and don't go to that second step and say, this guy sucks against the go ball, bombs away. That's not the process, and that never will be the process, and math can never fill in that groundwork in the middle.
It always comes back to the analytics debate on this show, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
It always does. No matter what we talk about for 2 hours, it always circles back to talking about math and nerds and analytics. But today we are going to talk a lot about roster projections, maybe a little bit of Patriots news here at the top of the show. Nothing major, but a signing that we will discuss and the impact of that as well. And we'll take your lovely calls and emails here on Catch-22 for the next couple of hours with Alex Barth over there, of course, as always, and Evan Lazar in the host chair here. And we have our roster projection to get to. Alex, we need to do the defense and your special teams as well here in a few minutes. So we're going to get to that. But before we get to that, we wanted to get to some of the news off the top of the show. And no, I will not talk about the Celtics too much in this show, I promise. I know.
Let's look.
I know. Everybody gets all up in arms when I talk about something that's not Patriots related, even though there's nothing going on in Patriot land, and the Celtics are the talk of the town, and the Red Sox are playing,
and the Bruins just released New Jersey,
and the Bruins just released New Jersey, so I'm gonna have to buy the misses in New Jersey probably. So just nope, I won't talk about it.
I wonder if you have any kind of event you can use to like buy one for. I'll say this: I was thinking about this driving in. This is, in a lot of ways, and people often say this, a draft show. We like talking about the draft.
That's true.
The NBA draft is tonight. That's why there's all this buzz about the Celtics. So let's save it till the end, and maybe we'll do.
No.
So it's not totally out of place.
No, everybody gets up in arms. Stick to football. Why are you talking about basketball?
We're a draft
on a
show.
football
we enjoy
show?
the draft. So at the end of the show, we'll do a draft minute. And what league that draft is about, we'll see.
Well, maybe we can tie it together to the Patriots somehow if we're good enough at this. But before we get into the roster projection, at the top of the show here, the Patriots did make a signing the other day, signing Yasier Durant, offensive lineman. Name might sound familiar. He has been here before. He was on the Patriots roster in 2021, actually played in a few games and started a game for the Patriots in 2021. He has been most recently one of your leagues, the UFL. Yes. The DC Defenders, the champions of the UFL.
I don't like the way you keep doing that. Your special teams, your leagues.
Because it is your league.
It's not. These exist for everybody. These exist for football fans as a whole.
It's everybody.
There are actually multiple people who are like true football fans, believe it or not.
So he was on the DC Defenders. Most recently, he won a championship in the UFL for whatever it's worth with the DC Defenders. He also, for whatever it's worth, was a first-team All-Pro in that league. All UFL. And for people that actually have followed that league closely, Yasier Durant was one of the best offensive linemen in the UFL this past season, just based off the tape.
He was the best left tackle.
So he played a little bit of left tackle. He played a little bit of left guard. But he made the all-UFL team as a left tackle.
Well, no. So he started out as a guard last year and then switched to left tackle halfway through, and then he was DC's left tackle all the way through this year when they won the title.
So he was he's a player with some NFL pedigree, obviously some UFL pedigree as well over the last couple of seasons. Now there's conversation about Yasier Durant's future and his viability on this roster, but I also think this ties into our conversation that was ongoing last week and is going to be ongoing all summer with this team about the left guard position in particular and just depth on the offensive line as a whole. And I look at Yasier Durant, I can't help but connect that a little bit to the retirement of Wes Schweitzer. You lost your veteran potential bridgey offensive lineman that could start on this team at left guard. You bring in another one, it seems like, in Yasier Durant. So in my mind, even though he played tackle in the UFL, he's played a little bit of tackle and he's played a little bit of guard in his career. The Patriots announced him as a tackle for what it's worth when they signed him. But in my mind, I look at this as another body, another name to throw into the hat at this ongoing left guard competition, basically replacing Wes Schweitzer as sort of the veteran in that room.
Yeah, I think it's a little more than that, honestly. This is a guy that played right tackle his first stint in the NFL, then played guard early when he got to the UFL, and has played left tackle since. They have a lack of depth. We talked about this last week. Like, unless Marcus Bryant really takes a step forward, they don't really have a swing tackle. Vidarian Lowe's only playing on the left side. Caden Wallace, DeMontre Jacobs are only playing on the right side. Jack Connolly played swing in college, but it's just like, where is he at skill-wise? Is he a guy that's... And I had him on my roster last week, but that was almost kind of by default. If I'd had Yasier Durant as an option, I would have put him on the roster over Jack Connolly because he can play left tackle, he can play right tackle, and he can play guard. So the fact that he can give you a backup in all those spots where they don't really have a defined backup, I think stands out. I think this is more than just an option at left guard. I think this is a guy that can fill a number of holes for them on the offensive line.
So you see him in that almost like a sixth man type of role where he can play guard and tackle, maybe move around as backup, and maybe make this roster. And this was another thing when we were talking about the offensive roster projection, which if you didn't hear that, that was in last week's show. This is another thing that stands out to me about how they construct this 53-man roster and how they build it. Do they keep some of these guys that are younger that have developmental upside while also keeping a guy like Yasier Durant, who, if somebody gets hurt, then Durant's probably your top backup and the guy that goes into a game. Maybe it isn't Marcus Bryant. Maybe Marcus Bryant's just here to develop, and it's not necessarily here to keep him around, to actually get into an NFL game as a rookie. You could maybe say the same thing about some of their other players as well on this team. So I could see that. I could see Yasier Durant coming in as, on game day, we actually view this guy as one of our top backups. He's not necessarily in the 2 to 3 year plan here as a future asset like some of these younger linemen are that we drafted recently. But maybe on game day, if somebody goes down, it's Yasier Durant that steps up. I could see that. I still do think he's going to get a chance to compete at left guard because I think everybody's going to get a chance to compete at left guard. I think you're going to see 4 or 5 different bodies there competing at that spot in training camp. But again, we talked about it yesterday on Unfiltered with Pauly P and I. It's the number one thing with the team right now that I have the biggest concern about is this offensive line. And on paper, they're definitely better than they were a year ago. There's no doubt about that. But they could only have gone up from last year. They were the worst line in football by all intents and purposes. Pretty much every statistical measure, 31, 32, 31, 32 in the league. Whether it's win rate or pressures or sacks allowed or PFF passer run blocking grade, like whatever metric you want to use, they were one of the worst in the league. So they just continue to shuffle, even if this is back into the roster shuffling, looking for as much depth and as much talent at that offensive line as they can possibly get. Now, I know he only signed a 1-year deal. The terms were not announced, but I doubt it was for high money. My guess is, though, is Yasier Durant had a little bit of a market. He had a really nice season in the UFL.
Yeah.
And I bet you he had a couple of teams that were paying attention to that. He decides to sign with the Patriots. So we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. But Wes Schweitzer retires. They have the open roster spot as a result of Wes Schweitzer retiring. And they bring in an offensive lineman to replace him. I think you can connect the dots there with those two things as well. Anything else on Durant?
No, I think that pretty much covers it.
All right, let's get into our 53-man roster projection for the defense and the special teams. We'll obviously start on defense and then trickle our way down here. So starting with the defensive line. Now, I know we always joke about this. You get into the weeds of what's a defensive lineman, what's an edge defender. Do you even like the term edge defender? No, you hate it. So
I included it this year since Madden put it in the game. I figured it was
since Madden put it into the game.
I knew you'd love that. I knew you'd love that.
Not because I've been telling you it exists for like 5 years, but now that it's in Madden, it's finally on your roster.
No,
projection.
I'll tell you honestly why I did it. And this is how I've always felt about edge. I think where edge, where that's a useful term, is when you go through the draft, there are guys that, depending on what team drafts them and what system they'll be playing in, might be a defensive end, might be an outside linebacker. So in the absence of system in that context, you have to call them an edge because you don't know.
Sure.
The thing that always bugged me is once they're on a team, you know what position they're playing because you can put them in that system, so it makes it a little clearer. But we don't exactly know how this Vrabel system is going to use certain guys. So this might be a one-year thing for me. I might go back next year when we have a better look at this defense. But for the time being, I mean, like Keon White, I actually don't know whether or not Keon White will profile more as a defensive end or more as an outside linebacker in this system. So it could go either way. So
I have him with the defensive
felt the need
lineman.
to use it this year.
I have him with the defensive lineman because I guess I put it two ways. I think it's alignment's obviously the number one thing.
Yeah.
If you're going to be consistently in or outside of the tackle, like that's the line of demarcation to me. Like if you're lining up outside over the tackle, be 5 technique, anything, 7-9, whatever, outside of the tackle, then you're an edge to me. You're a pure edge. If you are Keon White, who I do think is going to play a bulk of snaps inside the tackles, then I would say you're more of a defensive lineman. The other line that I often use is 2-point or 3-point stance.
So I use that, and then I use like how often are you dropping into coverage?
Yeah.
Right? You're not going to drop a defensive lineman in coverage. Remember, they used to always drop Trey Flowers into coverage.
Yeah.
So like that made him seem more like a linebacker.
I liked it.
You liked when they dropped Trey Flowers into coverage?
No. But I didn't mind it as much as everybody else.
I still remember when they were playing the Steelers, and this was prime Le'Veon Bell. I don't remember exactly what year it was, but Le'Veon was like the dude. Yeah. And it was like a 3rd and 5, and they had Trey Flowers in man coverage on Le'Veon Bell around midfield, and I'm like...
It got a little wonky at times, but this isn't the point of this segment of the show, but...
It's June.
When you get into the simulated pressures in that world, you can see why it's advantageous, because when he lines up on the line of scrimmage, most likely with his hand in the dirt, the offensive line or the pass blocking has to account for him as a rusher.
Right.
So that will get an lineman to engage him off the snap, which in theory could create a free runner someplace else.
So
right?
I get doing that sometimes. Like, yeah, and it keeps the offense off guard. It's more like, got to have it downs. I'm trying to win with skill. I want my best players doing what they do best. That was always kind of how I viewed it.
They've been very successful in the past, though, with what are called replacement blitzes, where you'll bring an inside linebacker on a blitz. You used to be like Hightower or Bentley in the past, and then you drop an edge, and that just schematically the tackle is going to set out to the edge because he's hand in the dirt about to rush or a 2-point stance about to rush. You have to account for that player on the line of scrimmage. So then what happens is like they slide the protection in that direction towards the pass rusher, and then the linebacker just blitzes unblocked through the middle of the defense.
This is what Brian Flores is making huge in Minnesota right now.
100%.
Yeah, I get that. I just remember that one play being like, and Trey Flowers, he was on a heater, and I forget who the Steelers tackle was, but he was like owning him the whole game. It was like, just let him go get the quarterback.
So getting back to the roster projection, defensive linemen, I have 6 defensive linemen currently on the 53-man roster. 3 obvious ones: Milton Williams, Christian Barmore, Keon White. Those 3 guys are locks. I have Kyrus Tonga and Jeremiah Farms on the team right now, and I have Joshua Farmer on the team right now. So that leaves 6 guys on. No Jaquelin Roy, Tremaine Jones, Javari Rizzi, Isaiah Eaton, or Wilfred Penny.
He'll stay as an IPP
on practice squad.
Player, yeah, I have Barmore, Farmer, Farms, Tonga, Williams, and then I have Keon White with the edge.
So you have Farms too, right? You said Farms. Yeah, this one wasn't really too difficult for me.
Feels pretty cut and dry.
I didn't really have any guys that I felt like I was really fighting for to keep on the roster. It's going to be interesting, though, and I look at the top of this with Williams and Barmore. How much are they really going to truly play those two guys? Are those guys going to be 70% snap count type of guys? Because that's high. That would be on.
That's a lot for defense.
Yeah, for a defensive lineman. I don't know if they have the interior depth and to really be rotating them a ton. Like Millen Williams, we were talking about this yesterday too. Millen Williams in Philadelphia was, I'd call him a rotational player. I think part-time's a little strong.
No, he's rotational.
Rotational player.
Wait, he was like right around 50%, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's going to be significantly increased with the Patriots this year.
And he talked about that at his introductory press conference.
It'll be interesting to see how that goes one of two ways. Either his production follows and it's just even more production than what he was as a 50% player, or he's really truly a 50% player that they're now making play 70% and his production goes the other way. I'm willing to bet that he continues to be a good player for them, but that's something to monitor with this group. The other thing that I thought was, as I was doing this, I continue to kind of feel the same way about interior run defense. Kyrus Tonga is really the only player on this list that they have right now. And Barmore at his peaks has carved out a really good run defender. He's really developed in that phase of his game. But in terms of like true run stuffers, Kyrus Tonga is really it. He's on the team because of that. There's really nobody else to put on this team as a true nose tackle that can play that role. But if I had to say one thing that I think this group, because I think the group's really good, but if I had to think of one thing that this group might potentially be a flaw or fatal flaw, it would be, do they have enough beef on the line of scrimmage to stop the run against some of these true, power run teams? Like if a team comes into a game plan and they have the horses to do it and they say, we're just going to run it down the Patriots' throat today. Like that's how we feel like we're going to beat them. Are they going to have enough beef to be able to hold up in that kind of game plan?
Yeah, it's a fair question. We saw this be an issue last year, and they've lost some size. We've talked about this, them adding another defensive tackle, like true nose tackle. Would that make some sense? But they're going to have to win by combination and guys coming down from the second level to help in those spots.
And plays in the backfield. Yeah, I think that's going to be a big part of it. Deuce likes to say they're going to stop the run on the way to the quarterback. I think that's a big part of it, too. If you make some of those splash plays, you get teams into second and longs, and they don't have the ability to run the football as much, and maybe that's how you get yourself out of worrying about that. So that's the defensive line: Williams, Barmore, White, Farmer, Tonga, Farms. I think we're all on the same page there. Moving on to the edge defenders. Love that this is a thing for you now. That I'm glad that you finally
for this year, we'll see what happens.
Come around
for this year.
So edge defenders right now, I have Harold Landry, Chazon, Anthony Jennings, Braden Swinson. Leaves Elijah Ponder, the UDFA, as of right now on the outside looking in. I didn't really have very many issues with this one either. I hope that Swinson shows us a little bit more in the summer.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily think that he had a bad spring. I think that would be going too far. He just didn't have a noticeable spring. I hope he's more noticeable in the summer. I am still circling Anthony Jennings on this roster. I don't know if he's a fit in what they're going to try to do schematically. I'm not sure if there's a role for him on this team. So maybe Ponder ends up coming on a little bit in the summertime. He's a little bit more their type in terms of the body type and the style of play. Maybe he's someone that could push Jennings up here eventually. But that was my group as of right now. And again, I do want to see a little bit more from Braden Swinson. Maybe I just need to notice him more. Maybe it's nothing he did.
It's just tough for any edge guy. And he wasn't out there a ton in the spring. He's just kind of behind. It seems like that top group is Keon White, Caleb Von Chason, Harold Landry.
Yeah.
On the edge. So I had those three, Swinson. I still have Anthony Jennings on. I know a lot of people took him off just because of his usage in the spring, but when he was out there, even though he was with the second unit, when he was out there, he was dominating. And this team just can't afford to move on from players with that talent. And you find a role for a guy like that. Now, maybe he gets traded. They can't be cutting a guy with that kind of ability. I just don't think they can. I think he's too good. So for now, I have him on the team, and they'll find something for him to do. I trust that.
I'm with you. He's one of their best 53 players.
Now, I had him as player 51 of 53.
Fair enough.
But because the fit is a little weird, but I just, again, I don't think they can move on from a player with that level of talent.
He's one of their best 53 players. So
It's a lot higher than he might be one of their best 20 players.
even if he's not a great system fit, to your point, they don't have enough guys that I'm like, excuse me, I need to find a role for so-and-so, so I can't keep Anthony Jennings. From a talent standpoint, it's a no-brainer. He's one of their better players. You can't just move on from that. I just wonder, him and Tavai are the two guys that I just can't really wrap my head around in this defense. I just don't know where they belong in this group. I have them both on right now just to get to the linebackers. Robert Spillane, Christian Ellis, Jelani Tavai, Jack Gibbons is my group right now. Obviously, Marte Mapu could have a conversation here about him now that he's officially a linebacker. We're going to have to see that in the summertime. Jelani Tavai is the same thing to me as Anthony Jennings. Do I think he's a system fit? No. Do I think he's one of their best 53 players? Yes. And until one of these guys, whether it's Mapu, whether it's Elijah Ponder, whether it's one of the younger guys, one of the rookies, someone's going to have to push those guys off the roster to just say they're not system fit, so they're not good enough to be on this team.
Right.
I don't think we're there yet. Who are your linebackers?
I had Christian Ellis, Jack Gibbons, Robert Spillane, and Jelani Tavai. And when it comes down to me, and we've kind of talked about this before, do they want somebody different than what they have at the top of the depth chart in Spillane and Ellis to run downhill and stop the run and help them in situational roles, or do they just want another guy that adds more depth of what they have? If it's the former, if they want just one run stopper, it's Tavai. If they just want more depth behind Ellis and Spillane, then there's a stronger case for Marte Mapu. But I think they'll want something a little different. I think they'll want some more size there. And then Marte Mapu maybe can stick on the practice squad, honestly.
I'm with you. I also just feel like with Tavai, if there were to be an injury to Spillane specifically, which when you look at this group right now, if Spillane gets hurt, then they're not in great shape, in my opinion. Spillane's kind of a linchpin right now of this linebacker group. You need Spillane to be the 120-plus tackle guy that he has been in Vegas the last couple of years. That's what you signed. That's what you need him to do. But if he got hurt and has to miss time, the guy with the experience and with the NFL game experience to be able to go out there and play 70 snaps in an NFL game is Jelani Tavai. Like, he's the guy that has that kind of experience, and I guess you could say the same thing about Jennings. So for that reason, I think he's here for the time being. The Mapu thing, fascinates me. I've been saying since the day they drafted him that he's a linebacker and not a safety. I got where they were going with him, playing him at safety. In the old system, there's a lot of overlap with those hybrid safeties and linebackers in today's NFL. It wasn't like it was, we're going to make this linebacker into a corner. Like, they were making him into a position that made some sense. But him playing at the second level of the defense as a modern linebacker is still the best path to him sticking in the league, in my opinion. He's still 220, 225 with good length. So even though he's not 250 pounds, for today's measurements and today's body types at that position, he's right there. Like, if he bulks up to like 225, 230, he's the size of most linebackers in today's NFL. At that size, 6'3", 230 is an NFL linebacker. Now, what it allows you to do, you have a lot of coverage flexibility. I think that's the main thing, whether it's him playing man-to-man against certain guys, running backs, tight ends, that thing, or dropping into zone coverages, high-stress zone coverages. He just gives you a lot of that kind of versatility where he's a linebacker, basically like a safety type. Like, he's a linebacker in a safety body, so he's going to have some coverage upside. Is he going to be able to get to that point where he was at Sac State, though, where he was flying around?
Well, so that's the thing. You talk about he's got to put this weight on. It's not necessarily as simple as putting the weight on and then just like, all right, I have this weight on, I'm playing the same way. Like, when you put weight on, how does it impact your movement ability?
Right.
So that's where the question is. If he can get up to 230 and still fly around like that, he's going to be a contributing player. If he gets up to 230 and then slows him down a step, well, then what good was putting on the weight? Because now he's lost was his best trait, which was his explosiveness.
Now, maybe it helps that he's playing more at the second level, and maybe he's more natural in that spot and has more experience in that spot dating back to college. The other thing with him in terms of flying around, he just wasn't reading the field very well playing safety. I didn't think he saw the field very well. I don't think he processed the game very well from that spot. A lot of misdirection and a lot of things, eyes in the backfield, tunnel vision. Like, he just wasn't seeing the game very well.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that instinct and you don't have that processing ability, you're not going to play fast. You're not going to play fast. So that's why guys that aren't particularly fast can play faster. Like, I don't think Robert Spillane is like this tremendous athlete, but when then you watch him play in the NFL, like, he is a great sideline to sideline tackler because he plays so quickly and he's processing things so quickly. So for Marte Mapu, I have less concern about him having the athleticism to be a rangy linebacker and more concerned about, is he going to see the game to be a rangy linebacker? For whatever reason, it just didn't click with him from a mental standpoint. There's certain games that I just have stuck in my head of misdirection and things like that, catching him off guard. Remember that game? It was 2 years ago in Miami where Tyreek Hill just ran right by him. He was in like a corners and like you just have the deep part of the field and he just got his eyes glued into some eye candy in the backfield and just let number 10, like the one player you can't let run by you, just ran right by him. Like, things like that just have consistently happened with Marte Mapu, that if he's going to stick around and he's going to take that next step, he's going to have to process the game faster. And I think that's really fascinating with him because a lot of his teammates credit him for being a really smart football player and a guy that can wear the green dot and communicate and all that kind of stuff. But he just hasn't translated in terms of his actual post-snap processing. So that'll be big for Mapu. Any hope at all for Monty Rice or Cam Riley? We didn't mention them at linebackers.
Cam Riley made a couple plays in the spring.
Had some pass breakups.
We'll see. Keep an eye on him.
All right, to corners. I have 6 corners currently on the roster. Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis, Marcus Jones, Alex Austin, Marcellus Dial, Isaiah Bolden. So that is 6. Leaves DJ James, Miles Battle, Kobe Minor, Brandon Crossley, and Jordan Polk off the roster. But Gonzo, Davis, Jones, Austin, Dial, Bolden. Yeah,
same group for me. I think Alex Austin's the key to this group in the sense, not that he's the best player, but like in the sense that you're going to have Gonzalez and Davis on the outside. You're going to have Marcus Jones in the slot. If Alex Austin, we saw him in the slot a decent amount in the spring, if he can be your third boundary corner and your backup slot corner, that kind of saves you a spot. And it opens up an opportunity to keep a guy like Isaiah Bolden maybe for special teams purposes, right? And it's not to say he won't play some corner, but we saw them finally mix him in a little bit with the kick returners this spring. Marcellus Dial, kind of same thing, but you should be able to get through the season mainly with 4 corners, and then it gives you some more flexibility with those other 2.
So the one guy that maybe had some questions again about scheme fit, they've talked a lot about size at the nickel spot. But I don't think Marcus Jones is going anywhere.
No.
I think Marcus Jones is the lock on this team. To me, he's probably their starting true nickel corner. They probably will have a safety nickel as well that they go to in those big packages. But when you just talk about traditional 3 cornerback nickel, right now Marcus Jones is the guy in the slot to me. He's just too good in man coverage. He's too strappy. He's too opportunistic with his playmaking ability as well. And he's too dynamic. Like, he's just such a dynamic athlete and a dynamic player. And then you add on to that the punt return ability. He more than has a role on this team.
Will they ultimately re-sign him at the end of the year when his contract's up? I don't know. That's where you get into more of that. Do we want to invest in this player with our scheme? But he's not a guy you rush out the door.
Right. Alex Austin, we talked so much about that Jason McCourty, third cornerback, outside corner role. That, to me, is Alex Austin. Carlton Davis and Christian Gonzalez are going to be your starters. Is there a chance that you need a third outside corner in that group? Maybe Gonzalez is shadowing somebody that plays a lot inside that week, and so you need a third body out there. Maybe one of those guys gets dinged up at some point and you need him to spot start or something like that. So I don't know if Alex Austin's a lock, but whatever is below lock, he's like right in that next category of pretty securely on the roster. Dial, I like his versatility. I still think Dial could play some safety or play some slot as well, some special teams. And same thing with Bolden. I think Bolden's going to be a really good special teamer in this league if he continues to develop, not only just as a returner, but also as a coverage guy, guy that can cover kicks. I think he has a really high future with that. So I have all 6 of those guys on the team there at cornerback. Safety. This one again, I could hear arguments for some of these other guys on this group, but as of right now, I have 4 safeties: Kyle Duggar, Jabril Peppers, Craig Woodson, and Jalen Hawkins. Marcus Epps, Del Pettis, and Josh Minkins are the guys off the roster as of right now. If you wanted to make the case for Epps or Pettis, I could hear it. I wouldn't be opposed to it. But Duggar and Peppers, in my opinion, have one more year. They have one more year as the incumbent starters. I think they're going to play a lot if healthy. I don't think there's any real argument there. If they have another down year by their standards, especially Duggar, in 2025, maybe we're talking about a different direction in 2026. But as of right now, because of the extensions they just signed, because of the year from hell that they both just had essentially last year, let's see if Duggar can get healthy. Let's see if Peppers can get his life in order.
Yeah.
And let's move forward with these two guys and hope that they're the players we thought
Well,
they
and
were.
Peppers was banged up too, especially when he came back last year. So, you hope if the two of them are healthy, we know what they can do. The two of them are healthy. That's one of the best safety combinations in football. I like what I saw from Craig Woodson this spring. Jalen Hawkins is going to make the team. They were just giving him so many opportunities in the spring. I don't think that's ultimately what his role will look like, because Duggar wasn't out there, right? And that will change things. I left Del Pettis off. I had him as my 54th player. Probably could make the argument to keep him over maybe like Marcellus Dial for special teams, but yeah, that group comes down to Duggar and Peppers. Where are they at? Do they take a step forward? And can they bounce back after? Look, last year I don't think was an accurate reflection of either of their true skill sets, but
Agreed.
It can be tough to bounce back in the NFL. You're another year older now. It'll be interesting to see where they're at, especially Duggar, just because he's still banged up and didn't practice this spring.
I'm hopeful that Craig Woodson can make those guys right. Like if Craig Woodson can play in the deep part of the field,
Yeah.
and then Kyle Duggar can play more in that box robber role or maybe over the slot a little bit, and Peppers can play closer to the line of scrimmage. Like if you can get those guys into their natural homes, so to speak, then I think that this group still has the potential to be really, really good. I still don't love it when it's base nickel, base defense, Duggar and Peppers up top, and that's your tandem. I don't love that together. I still have concerns about if they're too similar to one another, and if they both really belong closer to the line of scrimmage. Are they going to be complementary enough? When Devin McCourty retired, we talked about it a ton. I talked to Devin about it. I wrote about it with some of the quotes that he had about how they used to be the puzzle pieces used to fit together really nicely back there. It was McCourty, It was Chung, it was Harmon, and they were able to just play off of each other so well. Once those other guys started to age out a little bit, it was McCourty and Duggar for a couple years there, where you have a true free safety, you have a true strong safety, if you want to call it that, box safety, and it all just fit together really nicely. I still don't know if Peppers and Duggar fit together that well, but if Woodson can be the third guy in, and he can be that guy that frees them up to do the rest of that type of stuff, then maybe you save that a little bit. Maybe you get back to that a little bit. It'll be interesting to see about that fourth spot, though. Right now I have Hawkins. I think we both have Hawkins, right, as the fourth safety making the team. But Epps and Pettis have a chance. Like they're definitely not – that's not set in stone by any means. Epps has played games in the NFL, kind of like Hawkins, like sort of like a journeyman safety, has played in the league, has started in the league. Pettis had a promising rookie season, if you want to call it that, as a UDFA. I just wonder with Pettis if you can just get him onto the practice squad. I don't know if there's going to be a ton of market for Del Pettis right now, based off of the Patriots, their roster and where their roster's at. So that's the safety group. Defensively, I think I skewed a little bit heavier towards offense in terms of numbers. Here, let me do a quick math for you. So I had 24 defensive players on my roster, and I had
25 and 25. I didn't even split. I didn't even mean to do that, but I did.
So I had 24 and 25 based off of my quick math.
Oh, did you count Schooler as a specialist?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll get to that.
So you really had 24 and 26.
Yeah, so a little bit heavier to defense then, I guess.
Yeah.
But, so that's the offense and the defense. Looking at special teams.
Yep.
Your special teams.
Okay. You're just like disparaging a bunch of fans for no reason when you do that. I don't know why you find that necessary.
I just like doing it to annoy you. Bryce Behringer at punter. That's not a surprise. Julian Ashby at long snapper, also not a surprise. I understand why they're keeping this competition going, and I understand why Parker Romo is here. But Andy Borgalis is going to be the kicker.
Yeah,
I don't think that's really a question. So Parker Romo maybe sticks around on the practice squad as an emergency kicker, filling in practice at times. That's often happens during the season to not put the tax on the leg of Borgalis during practice during the week. So Parker Romo sticks around on the practice squad, but Andy Borgalis is going to be the kicker.
Yeah. Do you do a bubble on yours?
I do a bubble. Oh, and by the way, Brandon Schooler, coverage ace.
I had him with the safeties.
Is Brandon Schooler the best special teamer in the NFL?
Who's the All-Pro last year?
Brandon Schooler.
The All-Pro, then yeah.
I think he's the best special teamer in the league.
I think he is.
There's is he still with the Jets? There's that other. I think he's with the Jets. There's another one. Probably was the second team All-Pro.
There's a guy. Isn't there a guy on the Chargers too? JT Gray from the Saints was second team last year.
Yeah, he's a good player too.
Yeah.
There's another guy I want to say is with the Jets. That's also a good special teamer, but I think Schooler's got him. I do a bubble, or did a bubble. So my bubble as of right now, Marte Mapu, Del Pettis, Layden Robinson, Javon Baker, Lan Larison, who I had off, and then I just put tight end 3. If they're going to carry a third tight end or not a third tight end, I think is a bubble type of decision.
So I do my bubble like March Madness, where it's like, you know how they do like last 4 in, next 4 out, whatever?
Yes.
So my last 3, so this is essentially players 51, 52, and 53. This isn't the order of how good they are, but it's the order of like where I kept them. Anthony Jennings, Jack Connolly, Jelani Tavai. And then my first 3 off were Del Pettis, Marcus Bryant, and Ben Brown.
Yeah. So we're similar. You're a little higher on Ben Brown than I am. It's not so much that I think Ben Brown's a bad player.
He got a lot more reps than I thought he would this spring. Now, granted, that was with Jared Wilson limited. But I also still think if Jared Wilson wins the starting job in camp, which I think he can do if he's healthy. Now, I originally came up with this take before we found out he was dealing with some sort of injury. But if he's fully healthy by July 23rd, I think he can win the starting job. I don't know if Garrett Bradbury stays as the backup. He might just be a guy that's, a 7-year veteran, he's started every game he's played in, I believe, in the NFL. Does he say, hey, let me go somewhere where I'm going to get a chance? Because once Jared Wilson's the starter, he's the starter, right? You're not continuing that competition. And if they were to do that, well, now Ben Brown's clearly the backup center. I think Ben Brown's a good backup center. I thought he was, okay as the starter last year, all things considered.
Yeah, for most of the season. He tailed off towards the end.
He tailed off at the end, but I would be fine with him as the backup. So he's going to be in the mix all the way through. I also wonder if they just have him play a little guard because, like you said, everybody's going to compete there. And, he's a physical football player. He's a smart football player.
That's the best argument I've heard so far about Ben Brown.
He's going to be in the mix. Like, he's not somebody we can just forget about, even though he might be the third center right now. And usually you're not talking about the third center as a guy that's really in the mix for a roster spot. The other thing is, if Jared Wilson plays left guard, what does that mean about Cole Strange? If that means Cole Strange isn't here, well, now you still need a backup center behind Bradbury, which again would be Ben Brown. So he's more in the mix than it seems like at first glance, I think.
That's a fair take. I hadn't really thought about, because at this point, and granted, we have a long way to go. And I know we say that all the time, but it's just has to be said.
Yeah.
I look at it as the odds of Jared Wilson coming back from this injury and then beating out Garrett Bradbury in training camp with really essentially not a very much of a spring. Like he was extremely limited in the spring. So he's playing catch up come August. So beating out Garrett Bradbury in season might be one thing, but beating out Garrett Bradbury for week 1 against the Las Vegas Raiders, I think is going to be lofty.
I'm not rolling out.
Especially when you put into this equation that Jared Wilson's already a 1-year starter in college that's a 21-year-old prospect. Like, he's already a young guy as it is in terms of center prospects go. Like, most center prospects that come in the league have been playing center for like 4 or 5 years in college. So the fact that this guy started 1 season at Georgia, is 21 going on 22, and then really didn't have a spring where he was participating fully, I just think it's lofty to expect him to then go out and beat a veteran center like Garrett Bradbury.
It's not just about Wilson either. Like, Bradbury took a step back last year. He's on the older side. If he takes another step back this year, like, does he come back to Wilson?
I see what you're saying. The one argument I would have for Wilson is that there's no doubt about it that his physical traits are beyond Bradbury's at this point. Like, Bradbury is undersized. He gets picked on in pass protection. Like, that's a real concern with his game. Jared Wilson's much more bigger, sturdier, more athletic at this point of his career than Bradbury is. I just think the experience is going to end up winning out there, because not that he's a quarterback like Drake May was last year, but with any rookie, like, you don't want to just throw the rookie into the fire unless you have to.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're going to have to be in a position where Bradbury's so bad that they have to push Jared Wilson into the starting lineup right away. But maybe Ben Brown sticks around on the practice squad too. Now, that's possible, because like, not a lot of teams carry like a true backup center anymore on their roster. They might carry a guy that could play some center in a pinch, like a Cole Strange, who could play center in a pinch, but just a purely one position backup center, you don't see that too often in the league. That's usually now a practice squad spot, so maybe that's Ben Brown on the practice squad, because I'm with you on Ben Brown in general. I didn't think he was awful last year. I thought he was, if he was your biggest problem on the offensive line last year, your offensive line would have been better than what it ended up being. Like, they had much bigger issues than than Ben Brown at center. So that's your roster projection. If you want to weigh in on our roster projections and you think that we're wrong or you think we're right or whatever, be sure to do so. The email address, which is right, I want to point this out. It's right there at the bottom of the screen now. We got fancy with this. We got graphics now. Producer Alex, that's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, I had nothing to do with that.
Yeah, it's I like the graphics, so you can see right there on if you're watching on YouTube or on the live stream on any of your social media platforms. Podcast@patriots.com is the email address. 855-PATS-500 is the phone number. We got some people waiting on the line, so we're going to get to those now, and I'll get to your emails. Patty is in Agawam. What's up, Patty?
What's up, Jen?
How we doing?
Great.
Doing good. So my question today is, who is as far as like who you guys haven't making the 53-man roster, who do you think your guys' most polarizing player is? And I'll give you my answer. Like, I mulled over two players, one on offense, one on defense. On defense, it was Kyle Duggar for me, but on offense, I think and I keep bringing this guy up, I think it's Cole Strange. And this is with the caveat of take the quarterback out, because obviously your quarterback is more oftentimes than not your most polarizing player. But to me, Cole Strange is like is the key to the whole offensive line. Like, if he's going to be 27 at the end of next month, and for me, like, you know, the 27 to 32, those are your prime years as an NFL player. You know, you have the experience, even though he's been injured, but like, you have the experience of going through a system or systems, and you know, just if he's able to kind of put it all together this year and really solidify that spot as left guard, you know, maybe he gets a contract extension, but more so, like, you know, Will Campbell's going to have his ups and downs as a rookie. You know, it's going to happen. He's not going to come in and be prime Joe Thomas his first year. But if Strange can kind of capture that lightning in the bottle that he had in 2023, where he statistically had his best season and can build off of that, like I said, that really, to me, I know, like, you have questions at center, but, like, that kind of solidifies the offensive line. More so, you know, more or less. And I just wanted to get your guys' opinion on that. I'll take it off air, guys.
Thanks, Patty. Yeah, Cole Strange is a fair answer. It's a fair answer. He's going into year 4 as the last year of his rookie contract. They obviously did not pick up the 5th-year option for pretty obvious reasons. So he's in a contract year. Whether he plays left guard or center, he's going to have to play it at a pretty good level to be here beyond this season, and maybe even be here this season. Like, I still am not ruling out Cole Strange as not even making the team at this rate. So that's definitely a good one. I would say the most polarizing, though, like when I hear polarizing.
Well, so like polarizing that we have them on the roster, or just who's the most polarizing player on the team? Because like that's two different things.
Right. So when I hear polarizing, I think of like controversial, to be honest with you, or like just a bane of people's existence in some type of way. I'm going to have to say Jalen Polk. Like, I feel like Jalen Polk right now is
You don't have him on the team.
I don't have him on the team.
He said that we have on the team.
Oh, someone that we have on the team.
So, like, I was going to say, I just think, like, when I hear that, it's like, well, so my first reaction was like, all right, polarizing in terms of, like, people are going to agree or disagree with me having him on. It's Kendrick Bourne. who's weirdly
Yeah, it's a
one of
good
the
one.
most polarizing players on this team. A lot of what I hear people complain about Kendrick Bourne, I'm like, are you sure you're talking about 84? Are you sure you're talking about that guy?
Well, their complaints are that he's not a wide receiver one, and no one's saying that he is.
No.
Like, no one has made that argument.
No, he's just like a solid complementary player. He's experienced with the quarterback. He's experienced with the offensive coordinator. He's got a little juice. I don't know. Like, and for all the stuff I hear about him being a bad locker room guy, outside of the Patricia year, there's not much evidence of that, and I kind of throw that out because it was that year. So I think he'd be a good, useful player to keep on this team. He's not going to solve every problem they have at wide receiver, but I think he'd be a good, useful player to keep on this team. But people seem to have like a real problem with him being on the roster.
I think the main reason why is there's sort of this like attachment thing that gets attached to Kendrick Bourne of like the mediocrity that's been that room, right? And
Yeah.
last year specifically, he was supposed to be the veteran in the room. He was supposed to be the leader. I don't necessarily think that he had anything to do with a lot of what went on, but maybe you think it did in terms of the immaturity and some of the stuff that went on with that room last year. Maybe you think that he's shoulders some of that responsibility as a more veteran player, that he should have been more of the adult in the room and a better leader to his younger teammates. Fine. I think the other thing is that for a while there, especially let's call it 22, 23, like he was higher on the depth chart than he should have been. So I don't think it's necessarily Kendrick Bourne specifically. I think it's just more of an era that Kendrick Bourne has represented.
Yeah.
And people just want to move on from that completely, which I understand. But I think both of us get heat for being so super pro Kendrick Bourne when all we're saying is that Kendrick Bourne is a serviceable NFL receiver.
Right.
None of us think that he's prime Randy Moss. Okay. He's just a serviceable guy. He's a decent NFL receiver. He's an average NFL receiver. That's it. That's all we're saying.
Well, and I also just think he has less variance than some of the other guys. And yeah, they have to keep some guys with upside, but you want somebody you can kind of set your watch to. Even if he's not the best player, you want somebody that you kind of know what he's going to give you.
Yeah, so that's a good one. I didn't hear the part that they had to be on my projection. I would probably say if he has to be on the projection, it's either Bourne or Cole Strange. Cole Strange is a good one. It's put up or shut up time for Cole Strange. Like he's gonna have to carve out a role, make this roster, be a starter probably, put some good tape out there. I mean, what's Cole Strange's future if his season goes the way the first three have gone, in and out with injuries, inconsistent play? I don't know where he sticks in the league beyond maybe like a tryout second contract somewhere. So it's a big year for him. Obviously, with the first round pick attached to it, it's a big conversation and a big storyline in general with that draft pick and what that draft pick represents. And in a lot of ways, similarly to Kendrick Bourne, it just represents a time where they were not making very many good personnel decisions as an organization. And so Cole Strange kind of gets lumped into that as a poster child for that entire era of Patriots football, which I think a lot of us would like to forget and like to move on from. So next up here is Anthony in Seattle. What's up, Anthony?
Hey, what's up, Evan? What's up, Alex? How you guys doing? Hey, long-time PFW/TU listener, caller, emailer. First time calling into you guys.
Nice.
So
thank you.
And through the years, I've looked for a second podcast to PU to try to fill that void when they go to two shows a day during the off season, and none of them have caught my attention until you guys came along. So I thank you guys for that.
Awesome.
Hey, so one thing that caught my ear a couple of times that Evan, you've mentioned it. I wanted to see what you guys think about this scenario. So you brought up Jared Wilson not ruling him out in that competition to possibly win the left guard spot if he just ends up being just the best pure blocker out of that group of guys. And that caught my ear just because. So I thought about, okay, well, let's say if it plays out that way, and he was to win the starting left guard job, and then he ends up being like a maybe like not great but good. Let's just say he's a good guard, and then like if Will Campbell's decent or good, I think in that scenario, I like to know what you guys think. But for me, I think if that's the case, I'm no longer all that interested in like moving him back to center. Let's say we move on from Bradbury, next season, And, I like the idea of, him and Will Campbell just kind of like growing up together in this league now. If we got some, you got good play over there on that side of the line. And then, looking to try to, I think guard's a more important position. And so now you're going to, Alex's, Soto, sign one, draft one at the center position now instead of it being like a sign one, draft one and trying to fill that guard position again. Or maybe even bring in a couple guys who can do kind of, or like Wilson, who could play both. And then now you got kind of a competition where it's three guys that fill two spots where you got the best guy takes the guard spot, the second best guy is the center, and then you got the third guy who's the backup for both spots. So just curious what you guys think.
Yeah, Anthony, thanks for the call and thanks for listening. We appreciate it. With Jared Wilson, I agree with the consensus that his best long-term position is at center.
Yeah.
And I think the number one thing is when you talk to people that know offensive line play, like the Duke Manyweathers of the world who have worked with Jared Wilson, having a center that's that dynamic of an athlete can just really open up a lot of avenues of what you can do in the run game that you can't normally do with a center that's not a great athlete. So the center, a lot like the middle linebacker, sets the pace of the offensive line. It sets how much range and just athleticism that you have on the offensive line. So when you have a center like Jared Wilson, who's a very dynamic athlete, the number one S tier, of course, of this is Jason Kelce. When you have a guy that can move like that at the center position, it just makes your line more dynamic as a whole. But I agree with the caller in that in a vacuum, left guard is probably a more valuable position because you're going to be facing those three techniques. Like you're going to be facing more pass rush types on the defensive line than you might be at center, where at center, a lot of your reps in pass protection, you're going to be uncovered. Like there's not going to be anybody straight up over you. So you're not going to be put into those one-on-one battles quite as often as you might be at left guard. So I get the caller's point. I still think Jared Wilson's naturally best at center. I'm not ruling him out for left guard, less about him maybe projecting as a left guard long term and more because it might just be your best five on paper. Like Campbell, Wilson, Bradbury, Onwenu, Moses is probably your five most talented offensive linemen on the roster. So if you're in that vein, if you want to get all those five on the team or on the field, the way to do it is to play Jared Wilson at guard. Right. So that's more my thinking of it. I like his point though, and I think that they're right there with you. Will Campbell and Jared Wilson are here to hopefully be anchors of the offensive line for the next 5 to 10 years. Like that's the goal. Whether it's center or left guard for Wilson in the long term, that remains to be seen. But the goal is to have those guys develop together and develop along this runway with Drake May as pillars up front for you. So hopefully it does work out that way.
Yeah. I do think you want to keep his long-term development in mind, and if it's your best five, week 1, September 2025, but you think he's better off waiting a month and then slipping in at center in October and he gets to develop at that position behind the scenes. I know you said you think he can develop at center while playing left guard. I'm a little less optimistic about that idea. I think you develop playing the position you're going to play, practicing at the position you're going to practice. I want his long-term development in mind, but if there's nobody else, like he kind of has to do it.
Be interesting to see how they feel about that because in this system, there's not as much mentally on the center. It's more on the quarterback than it is on the center. We've talked about that a million times. So it'll be interesting to see how they feel about it. He's relatively inexperienced, like I was saying earlier.
Yeah.
So regardless of where you play him, he doesn't have a ton of in-game reps under his belt. So if you feel like the best way for him to develop is in-game live reps, which I do, I think that's the best way for any player to develop. Now, you don't want to rush them and put them out there too soon.
But they're not reps at it's a different position.
It is, but it's not. We're not talking about him playing tackle. Like we're talking him moving over one spot.
But you're also talking about the mechanic of actually snapping the ball and having to get up from that stance and that sort of thing. So
you are. It's
like
a fair point.
It's different mechanically.
But if you're in practice, and yeah, he runs scouts team center and things like that. But if you're in practice and you're not getting any real live reps in games at center and you're a young, inexperienced player as it is, like where is that? Is it enough to just give him practice squad reps during the season, scout team reps during the season and add, because he needs to play at some point.
We'll see
right?
we'll see how close he is in preseason, that will be big. But like, if you think he's close enough in preseason, maybe he's not perfectly polished to play center, but you see like, hey, he's pretty close. So let's start him at center so he can get over the hump. And by the time we get, around Halloween, he'll be rolling.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a chance that he plays as a rookie somewhere on this line. More than a chance. And I'm not necessarily with you that he beats Bradbury out for week 1 or has a chance to, but does he have a chance to beat Bradbury out by Halloween? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely on the table and should be on the table.
I just think that runway becomes longer if he's starting at guard. Also, if he's starting at guard and you want to move him to center to replace Bradbury, now you're changing 2 spots instead of 1, which becomes more convoluted.
That's a fair point as well. I understand what you're saying. And we've been down this road. We've been down this road with Mike Onwenu, and it hasn't been pretty, right? Inside, outside, inside. Now this isn't quite as big as that.
Give him a position. But I think center to guard is a bigger transition than you're making it.
But it's not as big as guard to tackle. It's not. It's a
completely different mechanic. Just like guard to tackle, it's a different mechanic.
But you're still blocking in a phone booth.
Schematically, it's more similar. The actual physical motions are very different.
But you're still blocking in a phone, like at tackle, you're blocking in space, right? You're dancing outside. Whereas at guard and center, it's a quicker car crash.
But I think going from a loaded up 3-point stance to having to snap the ball and get yourself up and get your hands up and get your head up and look around, like that's a big difference. When you're a guard, you're looking, you see your assignment, you have them sized up from the beginning. When you're a center, there's more you're doing before you get to that stage.
You're right.
So I just let him work at that position.
Can I bring up one other nerdy offensive line thing?
I need all the nerdy offensive line stuff I can get so I don't look bad in front of David Andrews. So
okay, so here's
actually a good question for him.
Here's another nerdy offensive line thing I've been thinking a lot about. Will Campbell.
Yeah.
And this isn't a short arm joke, so don't make it that, but it's not a short arm joke. He really, I could probably, in the 6 to 7 games, I want to say maybe 8 games of his that I watched at LSU last year, I could probably count on one hand the amount of time he was in a 3-point stance.
Yeah, they don't do it.
They don't do it. And they play 99% of their offenses out of the shotgun. He was up in a 2-point stance, up on his feet with his arms up, and not in the 3-point Patriot style.
Yeah.
In a pro style.
He has that weird sort of upright stance to begin with.
And he has the weird upright stance to begin with. It's not something that I'm concerned about. It's something that I want to watch. Like, it's on my radar to watch in training camp over the summer. There's a lot of advantages in the run game to being in a 3-point stance. Now, you might sit there and say, well, isn't that a tell? It can be. Actually, if you really study film, it can be a tell sometimes for certain guys. A guy that has a little bit of a tell like that is Trent Williams. But Trent Williams is so damn good, it doesn't matter that he has the tell. But he does have a little bit of a tell. 3-point stance, though, it's just as exactly how you would think. It just naturally creates a lower pad level. You are just leveraging. You're down in the 3-point stance instead of upright. So you're just naturally, your pads are starting at a lower point. So it's easier to kind of just get out of your stance and explode out of your stance and get into the block with low pads and good leverage. It's not a thing that he's never done it. And it's also not a thing that his arms are not particularly long. So when he goes into the 3-point stance, the couple of times I saw him do it in the spring, it was just kind of awkward at first to see him do it. And I don't think he's done it a ton. Again, I'm not concerned. I am observant. I just want to see it more consistently and see what it looks like more consistently. Am I crazy for caring about this, or is this
like you said, it's a thing. It's a thing to watch. I don't know that it's the biggest concern because it will help with the leverage at times. No, it's absolutely a thing. It's like when we talk about, we did with Drake May last year. He's never really been under center, right? And it's just a different mechanical thing. It doesn't mean he can't do it. It's just another thing he has to learn. Actually, yeah, that seems like a fair comparison, right? Or
yeah, I would love to ask, and I probably should have already asked Will Campbell about it, because in a lot of times when we hear about the under center thing with quarterbacks, they'll come back, and Matt Jones is this way. He laughed at it because in high school he ran a version of the wing T and was under center all the time. So maybe there was a chance that Will Campbell down in the Bayou in high school in Monroe, Louisiana, was in a 3-point stance for 4 straight years, right? I don't know. Maybe he was. You never know. So maybe it's nothing. It's just something that was on my radar. The stance that he has, and then coupled with that, the fact that he hasn't played a lot of reps with his hand in the dirt is just something that I want to watch and monitor. Do they tweak with his stance? His stance is unorthodox. He kind of stands like straight up.
Yeah, he's kind of got an Ash and Genty thing going on.
He stands like more straight up or more vertical than most guys. But then as soon as the ball is snapped, he has really great sink and flexibility to like get into that power stance that you want to see him in, that athletic stance. But he does start from a higher point than what you're used to. Now, Emory Jones on the other side at LSU also did. Not as pronounced as Will Campbell, but it was also a little bit more of an upright stance for him as well. So maybe it was just an LSU thing that's how they felt they wanted to do it for whatever reason. But do you think Genty is a good example? In Vegas, this has been a little bit of a talking point. Do you tweak with Will Campbell's set, not his actual post-snap, how he moves, but like the actual, when he comes to set, he's more upright?
First of all, the Raiders are trying to change Genty's stance.
I don't think they are, but it was a talking point with their media.
That's something that I don't think you need to. No, there's a picture of him with his hands on his knees. That'd be a shame if they changed that. I love his stance. And he's not the only one to do it. I think Jay Ajayi used to stand like that. There's a couple other guys, but I might just be thinking
is that
Boise
a Boise State thing?
Yeah, maybe. But that was, I think, 2 coaches ago for them. I don't think you tweak his stance right away. If he struggles out of the gate, that might be one of the first things that you look at to adjust. But you're already throwing enough on his plate. If he's comfortable and it's working, there's examples of this in sports. You know, I always go to like Steph Curry, right? You would never teach a kid to shoot a basketball mechanically the way Steph Curry shoots it. He's a very unorthodox jump shot. But you're also not going to correct Steph Curry's because he's Steph Curry and it works for him. But it works for him. It's not going to work for anybody else. Aaron Rodgers, very unorthodox throwing motion. You wouldn't coach somebody to throw the ball that way.
He throws with both feet off the ground.
Right, but you're not going to look at him and be like, no, you need to change this. It's up. Now, if Aaron Rodgers had gotten in the league and it kind of sucked at first, yeah, the coaches probably would have gone to him and been like, no, we need to clean up your mechanics. So I think that's something with Will Campbell. If it works for him, it works for him. You don't screw with it. And it's not something you're necessarily going to touch right away if he's proving in the summer that it's working. But if he starts to struggle, that's going to be one of the first things you look at and correct.
When Drake May first got in here last year, I remember talking to T.C. McCartney, their quarterback's coach last year, and I know that staff has a lot of negative energy around them right now, but they did a nice job with Drake May, Van Pelt and McCartney.
The one thing they do well is like the hardest thing to do.
And I remember talking to him about Drake May's throwing motion because there's a lot of talk about it was, the elongated throwing motion, and he kind of brought the arm all the way back. Would you want to tighten that? Would you want to shorten that? And the one thing that McCartney said to me was that when it comes to the throwing motion, the concern that you have about it is he controlling the football and is he throwing the ball accurately? So some people looked at it in the draft and said Drake May's throwing motion is part of the reason why he has those May sprays, is because his throwing motion is longer. So basically you just have like more margin. You're creating more room for error, right? Because you're longer, so you have more time to make a mistake in your mechanics. So if you shorten that motion up, then in theory, it's going to be quicker. It's going to be more compact. The ball is going to come out smoother. I would say the same thing is true for Will Campbell. They didn't touch Drake May's arm motion because they felt like it wasn't an issue.
Right.
They felt like it wasn't why he wasn't throwing accurately. They thought the accuracy was more timed up with his footwork and the fact that he wasn't throwing in rhythm with his feet. So once they cleaned that up, he had some sprays last year, but he was way more accurate than anybody could have imagined. It was way better than anybody could have imagined. Same thing in my mind with Will Campbell. Like you said, if his stance and his start of his set is not hindering him and he's not losing because of it, then don't touch it. If he's spraying the ball all over the field with the offensive line equivalent of that then maybe you start to be a little bit more concerned about it and you start to get him into a more natural stance. But I'm not worried about like any of the high level stuff with Will Campbell. I'm really not. I think he's going to be fine. All this little minutia stuff though is
so we do on the show.
I find it interesting. We'll see what happens. I don't know if they're going to tweak with it, but I will definitely be looking for it. Kaylee is in San Diego. What's up, Kaylee?
Kaylee.
Hey, guys. I was watching Patriots Unfiltered yesterday, and I heard Evan was talking a little bit about the break in between for the summer. Who are you guys watching for this summer and making sure they're staying out of trouble? We saw Diggs on the yacht. Who else are we watching?
Oh man, thanks for the call, Kaylee. I'm not going to speculate on players potentially getting into trouble. Let's hope nobody does. But that was just a point we brought up yesterday about this being the time of the off season where just league wide, unfortunately, this is when guys tend to
School's out.
Get into some trouble. But let me ask you this as an off season topic, Kaylee. We're not dodging your question. It's just I don't think we need to speculate about that. The question that I have for you, because I have two different brains when it comes to this. My, working brain is saying if you cancel my summer NFL calendar, I am not going to be happy. Okay, like this 5 weeks is really our summer.
Yeah,
where we actually get to enjoy summer. I know, woe is us. I know, but bear with me.
Yeah.
However, from a logistical standpoint, it makes less than 0 sense that they go through this spring circuit and they have this weird 5-week gap and then we come back for training camp. It just doesn't make any sense logistically why they do it this way. I still think, based off of some of the things that you hear coming out of these NFLPA meetings and league meetings, that reconfiguring the entire offseason is on the calendar or on the docket, in terms of just putting it so that OTAs leads directly into minicamp, directly into training camp, instead of having the spring start in April, run through June, 5-week break, training camp. We would have everything would probably start in the beginning to middle of June, run all the way through July. Maybe you have like a week off in there somewhere around July 4th, and then everybody back for training camp. You, the reporter, would probably hate it, but doesn't it make more logistical sense for it to be that way?
It doesn't. You need a break physically at some point.
So the break would be the off season from the end of the football season in January/February to the beginning of June would be the break.
2.5 months of camp, because that's essentially what you're talking about. So you're talking about starting in mid-June to mid-July, mid-July to mid-August to the end of August, right?
Yes.
That's 2.5 months of camp.
You'd have
that's brutal. So you'd have to shorten it.
What you'd have is this OTA thing, what we have now, where within the very beginning would be more of like a ramp up period, and it wouldn't be 5-6 practices a week. It would be like 2 or 3 practices a week.
How about you just get rid of that and you start like the second week in July? Get rid of the spring and start 2 weeks earlier.
That is probably the compromise. That's where the NFLPA is.
Yeah.
The NFLPA wants to do away with the spring thing altogether.
So, like, for instance, this year, because they always start on that Wednesday now, right? Which is July 23rd.
Yes.
Start on July 9th. So that gives you 2 more weeks of lead up. And that can be all the install, right? What does install realistically take? I've never done this process. Is 2 weeks too short for install?
For your base stuff, no. Now,
but what do they install in the spring? I'm saying the install that you would do in the spring.
Right, but I'm talking about your base offense, meaning like 1st and 10 from the 25. What plays are you running? By the end of the spring, because they have the extra time now, by the end of the spring, they're already into like red zone work.
Well, I guess
so
the other thing,
that type of stuff would have to wait.
The other thing, I guess, is because we're thinking of this starting with OTAs. They have a month before OTAs begin that's on the calendar.
Yes.
So when is that what's starting in?
So the
mid-June?
The proposal that I have seen from the NFLPA and that came out a couple years ago is the first time I heard of this. The proposal that I saw was they would start probably right around this time, maybe a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
They would have essentially a mini version of the spring where it's OTA rules, non-padded, shorts and T-shirt.
But what about the stuff before they even get to the OTA practices? Because there's like a month of that, phase 1, phase 2.
That would be gone.
But you need that too, because isn't that when you like go over on the whiteboard?
That's when your
plays are going to be. And
yes, that's the classroom.
So don't you need that?
I think you need it, but this is the compromise.
Okay.
Because I think that the story that Paul brought up was a story from Bill from Belichick about how stressed out Belichick would be about this time of year. because you don't know what the players are doing. They're completely off. They're out of the facility.
I get that.
And it's not just about the off-field. It's also what are they
Sure,
working
are they
out?
going to come back in shape?
Right.
I guess what I worry about is if you shorten this, we already have enough issues where you get to week 1 and players aren't ready. Right? The first month of the season has become an extended preseason because teams are still installing plays. The linemen have barely hit anybody. So if you're going to shorten this even further, what is that going to do to the quality of the product? If they're going to do that, you need to have more padded practices. You need, and I don't think the players are going to go for that. And I don't know that they should, but like, you need to balance the fact that you still need to actually get ready for the season.
Agreed. Now, the biggest pushback, this is really, I would say, player-driven mostly.
Yeah.
The biggest pushback I think players have about all of this is that in no other sport, in professional American sports, do you have this kind of calendar where there's a spring practice circuit for 7-8 weeks. It's almost 2 whole months, really, when you think about it. They have a little bit of a lull in there, like around the draft and rookie mini camp where the veterans are out of the building. But it's basically a 2-month thing from April to beginning of June. You have a spring camp, then you have a 5-week break, and then you have training camp into the season, then you're going. In baseball, they report for spring training and they play all the way through. In basketball, they report for camp, they play all the way through. In hockey, they report for camp and they play all the way through.
Yeah, there's just so much more you have to do in football.
But I think that the players want one continuous break.
Yeah.
That's what they're trying to vouch for. So to your point, teams are probably saying, well, let's do 2 weeks of phase 1, phase 2 classroom install and conditioning. Then we'll do a 3-week ramp-up period. That is OTA rules. Shorts and T-shirts, but we're on the practice field. We're playing actual football 11 on 11. And then training camp starts right around the same time. Now, that would start you and us right around mid-June. Where,
it would have been June 11th this year.
Like right where minicamp started.
Yeah.
That would be phase 1 of OTAs would be then, and you would run all the way through the whole season. It wouldn't stop at that point.
Yeah, that's just a lot. That's a longer calendar than these other leagues have.
Which is why the players are pushing back and don't want to chop off phase 1 and phase 2 altogether.
You still need to get ready for the season. You still have. Also, so I've heard mixed things on this from players because some guys, during the season, you don't get a lot of time to spend with your family. And this is more the older players. You have kids, right? You want to be off when they're off. You want to be off when they're out of school.
Yeah.
So you can do stuff as a family. And, if you start on June 11th, you're basically going back to work, like a week before they start summer vacation.
Yeah. And just, all of these things. Like if you play in New England and you're up here that time of year, obviously this is the best time weather-wise. It's the best time for vacation, the vacation around here.
It's weird, but in theory, the best way to do it that would make everybody the happiest, this wouldn't be good for the football. The best way to do it would be to do it in the other direction. Come out of the draft, go right into OTAs. Not because there's like 2 or 3 weeks, right, between the draft and OTAs. Come out of the draft, go right into OTAs, go into minicamp, do training camp in like May and June, take July off, and then come back in like mid-August and have like a 2-week ramp up to the season. Now, that makes zero sense logistically because you're going to lose a lot and then have to get right into the football. But that's probably what everybody would want. It would just hurt the football.
So here's why I brought it up. Not only because I am preparing myself for this being a reality at some point that they're going to chop July off in June, but also Joff here from Virginia, he wrote in about a potential 18-game schedule. And in my mind, the league is not going to part with anything. And when I mean the league, I mean the owners.
Yeah.
The owners are not going to part with anything that costs them money. Like they're not going to give up any games. They're not going to give up any gate, ticket gates or anything like that. They're not going to give up anything of actual value. Now, the one thing they might give up is making the calendar more player friendly.
Right.
Because that doesn't cost them any money, in theory. So, Joff or Jeff, I don't know how it's Jeff with a G.
That's Jeff.
Jeff in Virginia says, the 18-game schedule is coming, and this is an off-season topic. That's why I'm bringing it up. And that's probably fair. So he said, how would you guys feel about 3 bye weeks to keep players healthier?
It wouldn't happen.
The way it would work is you would do half the NFL have a bye Thanksgiving week, half the week before.
Absolutely. So I'll tell you right now, it's not going to happen.
Friday will have the prior off week. Then you do 1 bye week. Okay, this is very complicated. Basically, his proposal is to have 18 games, 3 bye weeks, and then have the Super Bowl on President's Day. If I'm not mistaken, all they have to do is add 1 more week in the Super Bowls on President's Day.
Yeah, and that's
right?
coming. And that's absolutely coming. Although they're going to get rid of a preseason game when they add the 18th. So I'm not sure where that week will come from. Honestly, what they should do is, I assume when they go to 18 games, they're also going to go to 8 teams per conference in the playoffs because that thing is looming too.
Ugh.
Once there's no bye weeks, they should have a bye week before the playoffs. And just everybody gets that week off.
I like that.
So maybe that's how you get to President's Day. Because they added a bye week before the regular season when they got rid of the 4th preseason game to push it back the way they did. No, they're going to have to go to 2 bye weeks when they get to 18 games. Like, that's going to happen. But what I think is what that's going to be is it's going to be the NHL does something like this. I think it's called potted bye weeks. I don't remember exactly, but like you're basically grouped with your division, and every division has a bye week at the same time. So what you'll have is probably from weeks. With 3 to 10, 8 weeks, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, so from weeks 3 to 10 or 4 to 11, each division will have a bye week in there, and then from weeks 11 to whatever, right? So you wouldn't have a bye week 2 and 5, right? It would be you're going to be in a group with the same team with your division. You're all, or maybe they just group teams differently, whatever. But like every team would have 1 bye week before the halfway point. Every team would have 1 bye week after the halfway point, and you'd be taking the same bye weeks with the same teams you're grouped with. And the idea is you'd be grouped with teams that you play to make the scheduling easier.
18 games, 2 buys.
18 games, 2 buys. But
that's
it's not that. It's a little more complicated
3.
than that, because you can't give a team like week 2 and 5 for a bye, or week 15 and like 13 and 15 for a bye.
They're going to have to be more strategic with the buys.
Right. Everybody's good. It's really what it's going to have to be is first half bye, second half bye. And you're going to have to split it like that. If you have an early first half bye, you have an early second half bye. If you have a late first half bye, you have a late second half bye. Because even if you split first and second, if you have a bye week 8 and a bye week 11, that could be advantageous or disadvantageous depending on who you look at. So there's going to be more math that goes into the bye weeks, and this is where it's okay to use math. There's going to be more math that goes into the bye weeks once you get to 2. And when they go to 8 teams in the playoffs, I'll say this again, there should be a bye week before the wild card round.
So I agree. I actually love the idea of the bye week before the wild card round, because I feel like that would also then in turn maybe make week 18 or 19, whatever the hell it's going to be.
No, it'd be week 20. If you're it's going to be 2 buys, 18 games, it'd be week 20.
Week 20, that would then in theory make week 20 more viable, because you're not
right.
A lot of teams that know they're going to be playing on wild card weekend now often use that as a rest week, or they go easy or whatever. It's kind of a pseudo bye week because they don't have the bye week, so they have to build their own bye week. So now in theory that week becomes more of like the regulars. You're not going to get what we got last year with Joe Milton versus the Buffalo backups. Like you're not going to get that as often. So I'm for that. I think that's just better for the product as well. 18 weeks, 2 buys is where we're headed. The concessions, my guess is a lot of them we won't even hear about in terms of the NFLPA. It'll be little things that have nothing to do with anything. Maybe the offseason reconfiguration. Those will probably be the concessions by the league, and 1 less preseason game, which I think
just can't wait till we can
totally
have 500 teams again.
And it will bring 500 teams back, right?
Yeah. 18 games. Yes, it's an even number.
So, math.
Yep.
So yeah, I think that's where we're headed. It'll be interesting to see though when we get there. President's Day weekend right now is just a week after the Super Bowl, right? Like, currently.
Yeah. No, they need 1 more week, and then it will finally be official. The day after Super Bowl will be a holiday.
It could just be a holiday. Like they could just make it Super
Bowl
Monday.
Back to back. I'll be fair. Like back to back.
Federal holidays.
Federal holiday. That's a tough sell.
I feel like our current president would do something like that though.
Look, if it's built in, why not? Also, don't you want to get it off of? You have a certain other obligation that weekend, right? Wouldn't you like to get it out of that weekend?
I get again,
Well, actually, everybody is asserting. It's also Valentine's Day weekend,
again,
which I find hilarious.
Woe is me, but I get absolutely bamboozled by that week because it's Jess's birthday and it's Valentine's Day and it's Super Bowl Sunday.
Was it the Rams-Bengals Super Bowl? Like I was texting you the whole time. You weren't
yes,
texting
we
back,
were.
And then I find out after you weren't watching.
We were out to dinner. And there was
probably didn't have to wait for a table. No wait.
And listen,
the whole restaurant. Jess, I rented out the whole restaurant. Look at this.
And as you know, Jess is a big sports fan, so it's not like that. She's like one of those girls that's like very anti this whole thing, but doesn't trump her birthday when it's not relevant teams. Like if it's not the Patriots playing in the Super Bowl, it's not relevant teams. It doesn't matter. But there was a TV. And her head was here, and the TV was like right here. I know I'm really good radio right now. The TV was right behind her, and she could tell that I was looking through her to the TV at one point, and she was just not happy. I don't think she made us switch seats, but she wasn't happy.
You of all people should want that move. But it is.
Yeah.
Oh man, when I found
it.
And it was the first year they did it. I think it was on Valentine's Day, right? And it was like
brutal. Just
good luck to all you. No,
brutal weekend.
I have the opposite. My birthday is on a major sports day or weekend, and I love it. My birthday weekend, and it's not always the exact day, my birthday weekend is usually the first weekend of March Madness, which is awesome. They better not expand the tournament. I do not want that to be the second weekend. It's just too many. It's too many teams. Do not expand Charlie Baker. Do not expand March Madness. Please. It's fine.
So
plenty of teams.
You say this, though, and Jess and I are going on 6 years together. Can you believe that? It's crazy. Like throw us a party for that. 6 years together.
Well, isn't that
that might be that might be the goal.
There's a thing. There is a party for that people generally have, by the way.
So, anyways, the Patriots have obviously never played in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
In that 6 year period. So hopefully, fingers crossed, Mike Vrabel, all goes well, but. Imagine my world if I am not only am I gone for the entire week covering the Super Bowl, woe is me, but I am also not home for her birthday.
But wait, so it's been 6 years. So you guys, the first year you guys were together was
19.
Yeah, because I remember watching it. I was with you guys for that Super Bowl. So.
Yeah, 2019. Yeah, we met in October during football season of October of 2019, and that was a weird football season for me because my priorities changed quite rapidly. Like all of a sudden I went from like only obsessed with football to like having this whole other thing in my life. My life definitely changed for the better, but it definitely changed.
They're going to move it back.
So did the Patriots.
And the Patriots changed as well.
They're going to move it back. The only shame in them moving it back, I remember the Patriots. So that the first week of February, right? February 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I remember looking this up at the time. The Patriots have won Super Bowls on, I think, 5 of those dates. So they only needed 2 more, and we would have spent the entire week with a Patriots Super Bowl anniversary on every day. And now when they win another one, we'll have to wait a whole other week. That one will be separate from all the others. And we only have 5 days of the week. We get to celebrate Super Bowls. Oh, woe is us. But
we'll get back to the football here in a second, but just one last off-season thing. So Drake May, congratulations to him.
Oh, that's right. He
got married. Smart man. This is the time to get married if you work in the NFL.
Unless they move this calendar, and then his anniversary is going to be during training camp.
But in theory, you line up. It's not just about the wedding day. Everybody thinks about the wedding day, but nobody thinks about the wedding day and the anniversary, right? Because then it's your anniversary every single year too. If you do it during football season, not only did you get married during football season, but then your anniversary now falls on football season every single year. So smart man got married right during this dead time in the off season right now. And now every year he should be safe. I think he'll be safe.
Unless they move this calendar.
Unless they move the calendar, and then he's screwed. All right, let's get back to the phones here. Robin is in Westboro. What's up, Robin?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey.
Good.
So I sort of have a bone to pick with both of you about this statistics argument.
Okay.
I feel like the media is split into people who don't like math, like math, and no one who actually does math. I see like a lot of people who are handed a statistic and trust it implicitly, or they are distrusted immediately. So
Because all
I
these
just wanted to
formulas
clear
are
the air.
secret. You can't do it yourself. All the formulas are kept secret.
No, but
you have to create
you
your
can
own.
still have a general idea how it calculates.
No, that's the whole thing. Like DVOA, it's a secret formula, right? You don't know how it's
a
calculated.
proprietary
Yeah,
formula,
DVOA
sure.
is definitely a bit more secret, but I think EPA is actually something you could work with a lot more.
You could code it, yeah.
Okay, well, you have to know how to code. That's because the average football fan's coding.
No, you don't.
The average
you don't
fan is
need-
coding. I
don't
think
need to know
QBR is secret, right?
code.
Proprietary.
Secret.
Proprietary.
We don't want people
I
to
don't
know
know.
because we're just trying to create things that fit our narrative. Sorry, go ahead.
So you could let him talk.
Go ahead.
Let him talk.
But my point is that people who do math understand that there's assumptions built into it, and are less likely to trust their own statistics because they know where the shortcomings are. And I just wanted to say, like, EPA is a very real stat, Alex.
Yeah, Alex.
What is it?
because
What is it the measure of?
Expected points added.
Expected points. But expected points is
It's not
average.
real. It's expected. It's right
Okay,
there in the
all right,
title.
Robin, I'll help
Go
you
ahead.
out here in a second, but finish your point.
Expected is average points. It's just
Yeah,
we're working
he-
with probabilities, so we say expected.
Yeah, he's
But
hung
Alex,
up on the word
how about this?
expected.
How about this?
He's hung up on the word expected.
Yeah, Alex, how about this? How about you just read a summary of how EPA is calculated? And I think you'll like it a bit better than you think because it plays into the situation of the game a bit more. Like this, I'm not saying it's an all-end be-all, it's a great stat because, again, there's assumptions built in, but I think it plays into the situation a bit more than you think.
Is that it, Robin? I thought you had a bone to pick with both of us. That's just with Alex. Don't leave me out.
Evan, I guess my problem was that sometimes you blindly trust the statistics. Like EPA, do you know how it's calculated? Do you have a general idea? You don't need to know the nitty gritty.
Yes.
Yeah, stuff like that. It helps you understand what the statistic is. Basically, what I'm saying is watch the game film of the statistics rather than just have the statistics to spit out.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think I watch enough game film for all of us. But
and
thanks for the call, Robin. Yeah, I hear what he's saying. No, I'm not a statistician. Like I'm not a that much of a math guy. I am one of those math guys that if you give me the numbers, I then interpret the numbers the way I want to interpret them, right? I'm not somebody that's actually calculating the numbers itself. I'm not Aaron Schatz. Like, I'm not building a formula and calculating numbers. I just use the numbers that Aaron Schatz gives me to then draw conclusions from them.
But you don't know. But so this is what bothers me. You don't know what the basis is for those numbers.
DVOA is his own formula. So
Yep.
that's something that is a little bit more cut and dry in terms of that. But expected points added, I do know for the most part how it's calculated. Taking,
I know what it is. Basically, on average, this team would score this many points on this drive. This is how much they actually scored on this drive. This is the difference, plus or minus or whatever. I don't care about that. Why did they do better than the average team did? Why did they did where I would like to think that most football fans, people who watch the game semi-regularly, can figure that out by watching the game themselves. Hey, this team started at the opponent's 30-yard line. It didn't score. I don't need a number to tell me that was a bad drive. Why didn't they score? Was the pass protection bad? Did the quarterback make a bad decision? Was the play calling bad? Did the defense make an unbelievable play? Did the coach make a bad decision in terms of going for it? Like, that's... I don't care that, the average team usually scores here and they didn't. I know. And I'd like to, maybe I'm giving the average fan too much credit. I'd like to think the average fan knows without being shown a number.
But I don't think that that's up for debate in terms of that's not what the numbers are being used for. The numbers are being used to do two things: either rank things, rank players, rank offenses, rank defenses, or to just like quantify, so and so is having a really good season in this area of the game, third down, let's say, what are like all the NFL teams, what are like, who's the best third down team in the NFL? You might traditionally just use like the percentages of did you make it or did you not make it, but EPA takes that into account and then also adds more of like, did you generate an explosive play on third down? Not just did you pick up 7 yards on 3rd and 6, but did you pick up 27 yards on 3rd and 6? But here's my point.
We already have numbers for all this. We have third down percentage. We have our average yards gains per third down. I know you're going to tell me, well, third down percentage doesn't work because, if one team has an average of 8 yards to go and one team has an average for 5 yards to go, obviously the 5-yard team. Okay, but that's almost removing the context because, relatively speaking, the team that's in 3rd and 8, converts more than the team that's in 3rd and 5, even though the percentage is lower. Okay, but the team that's in 3rd and 5 more often is still the better team because they're getting to 3rd and 5 instead of 3rd and 8. I actually don't want that piece of context removed. I want that in there. So, like, I just think it's I'm not even saying the numbers are wrong. I just think it's people creating they're adding or subtracting context as they want in order to find a number that supports their argument. That's what analytics are. To me, so often they feel backwards engineered, that this is what I believe, and I need a number that I can put out there to say what I believe, versus I believe this and here are the numbers that back it up. Because why can't people say, I think some of these people, because they don't watch the game in a way they can say, I believe this, and maybe the numbers don't back it up, but here are the X and O's football reasons why it's true. The numbers are in there to replace the X and O's football reasons, which I understand simplifies it for some, but I also think it's become something that's kind of become a lazy tool.
So, two things, to that and to a different point. To that specifically, I tried to like the caller's point about like watch the film, that yada yada, which I think is funny. So I try to watch the film first and foremost all the time. So when I look at the film and I'll say, just in my head when I watched that tape, my takeaway was that they were really successful this week with gap runs. Right. For whatever reason, their downhill run scheme, the gap schemes, those schemes are really humming today. But in theory, like that could be anecdotal, right? Like where just a couple of big plays stand out in your head, and that's how it feels. What I like about the numbers is that I can say the Patriots were really effective in man coverage this week, or the Patriots are really effective with gap runs this week, and then I can put not just my eye test to it, I can put an actual quantifiable number to it and say the Patriots are really good in gap runs this week. Their EPA was plus whatever. So now you say you have my film analysis backed up by the numbers. If you're going to the numbers and then reverse engineering, like you said, and then trying to pry out the film that supports the numbers, you're doing it backwards.
But don't you believe that there's people that do that?
Probably.
Yeah, there are.
But I think that the hope is that the football people, the people actually in the football world that are making these decisions or commenting on this type of stuff, are doing it the way I'm talking.
So, and it's
this is what I'm
my
seeing,
issue's more with the way it's
and
used
I want to
publicly.
back it up because, let's face it, I fully am aware I am not a coach. I am not in a football front office. I am not on a coaching staff. So, I can sit here and tell you that I know how to watch the film. If you don't believe that, I totally understand.
So, but why couldn't you just do yards per carry on gap versus yards per carry on not gap?
You could, but yards per carry in itself, like kind of the caller's point, has inherent flaws to the statistic. Like, what if like a 2-yard run on 3rd and 1 is much different than a 2-yard run on 1st and 10? That's where EPA can help. Like EPA, that's the goal of the statistic.
So the one I'll give you that I've started coming around on, it's success rate.
It's a similar stat.
Which is basically like, did you get X percentage of yards to a first down, right?
Yeah. So the way that I look at EPA is, just kind of sum it up beyond just its expected points added. EPA to me is a better measurement of like explosiveness of your offense, like essentially just like a more glorified yards per play.
Okay,
right?
But we have other we have explosive play percentage,
right? But when you look at explosive play percentage, you're taking the sample and you're going like this because you're only looking at the plays that are actually explosive. EPA takes all of the plays into account and measures how just explosive an offense is compared to the average, right? success
but
rate,
you can still
success rate is really good. Success rate is like consistency of an offense, like how consistently are you taking chunks out of the chains, right?
So
That's
success
consistency.
rate, I've kind of come around on because my theory is that like if you run the ball for 3.4 yards per carry, you never need to throw it, which is not literally true, but it's kind of a thought experiment, right? So like I don't hate that idea of okay, how often are you? Remember a couple years ago, I got really into that thing about average yards to go on first down.
Yes.
So like that kind of thing, I'm super interested in. The EPA to me is just like I don't.
You don't understand it. And
No,
I'm not
I do
saying
understand
No,
it.
but I mean like you can't wrap your head around it because of the math equation. Like you don't. It's a formula.
What is the equation? What is the equation?
Well, I can't just like it's not just like as simple
Is it
as
public?
like yard. Yeah, I mean it's public.
Is it public or is it
If
public?
if you know where to look, it's public. Now, here's the thing. The thing that I think bothers me the most about your argument, because I hear some of your other arguments about this. You and your brethren are caught up on the word expected, because in other sports, it means it's something different than what it means when it comes to EPA. In basketball, it's like expected points or expected like percentage.
Expected field goal percentage.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Like that's a projected number. It's not a real number. It is, if we take this shot 100 times, we expect to make it 70% of the time, but it's not taking into account, like your brethren likes to say, it's game 7 of the NBA finals and the pressure's on and like it's a different shot than in January. That expected goals in hockey, same thing. You're taking shots from a high danger area. Most of the time, those shots go in this amount of times. You got Hoser, the goalie stood on his head, and it only went in this many times in this game. That's not what we're talking about when it comes to EPA. EPA is taking, in this situation, 1st and 10 from the 25. The league average is this, and you produced that.
But you don't score 2.5 points on one play.
But it's not. That's not what it is. It's not about like we're not talking about it in terms of like touchdowns worth 7, field goals worth 3. It's on its own scale.
So where does that value come from? How are you assigning the value to that? What is the point? Like it's not referring. It's referring to something that's hypothetical, right? If you ever run,
how is it referring? It's a baseline average of the league. All 32 teams are this successful on this particular down and distance in this time of the game.
What defines successful in that situation? Because you said it's about explosive plays.
The average amount of yards. How on 1st and 10 from the 25, how often? Like what is the average yard per play across the league? That's the baseline. That's 0.
Okay.
In EPA, if you are above that, let's just call it 4 yards.
Yeah.
If you gain 6 yards, then you're in the green. You're a plus something.
Would you be +2?
No, you're just because it's.
So then, what is it? What is the number tied to?
Because the number is on a scale. You're talking about it like you're talking about it like numbers on the scoreboard. It's not. Because it's on its own scale.
Right. So this is an imaginary number.
It's oh my god. It's not an imaginary number. There's just
it's not
scale.
yards. It's not points. It's not down. Like what
it's
is
its own statistic? Yeah.
Right, it's made up.
No, it's not made up. Made up is expected field goal percentage. That's made up. I get that. There's a baseline. This is the scale.
Baseline
0
of what?
Of all 32 teams and what they average in the game.
Okay, what they average, you have to average it. You average points. You average
yards. You average yards.
Okay, so then,
but it's not on. It's on its own sliding scale. I don't know why that matters. It's on its own scale. 0 is 0. It's the average. So you either above 0 or you're below 0 or you're at 0.
But what dictates how much you're above 0? If you gain 2 yards above the average, but you're not +2.
Because it takes into account the fact that just because you gain, if let's go back to 4 being the average, just because you gain 6 yards, that in the grand scheme, that's like only like a fraction of the actual like impact of the totality
what
of the game.
dictates how much of a fraction it is?
The situation. What is it in the game? What is the down? Like third down's obviously going to have more weight. A turnover or a touchdown's going to have more weight than a regular scrimmage play.
That sounds like it would. What about a team that nickels and dimes its way down the field?
Yeah, they would. Technically speaking, like they wouldn't be super high. That doesn't mean that they couldn't be top 10 or something like that. But compared to a more explosive dynamic offense,
that nickels and dimes its way down the field.
Yes.
So it doesn't leave room for that. Like the early Brady Patriots, right, versus those Manning's Colts teams. who would have had a better EPA? Who won more games?
It's a good question.
Because
I don't know. I don't think
those
we go
Patriots
back
teams,
far enough for that.
Those Patriots teams were not hunting explosive plays.
I don't think we go
Those
back
Colts
far
teams
enough for
were.
that. But like you're so caught up.
You can't go back that far because now this number's informing, or it doesn't go back far because this number's now informing decisions, and the preferences and what you value has been changed.
No, you can't go back that far because we just haven't had a nerd that's taken the time to go back that far.
Somebody should. I'd be curious to see.
I think I want to say we go back pretty far.
I think it goes back to like 2006. Actually, I feel like I remember seeing this.
But it's not 2003. Like I don't think we can go here. I'll pull it up for you. Oh, this database actually goes back to 1999.
Interesting.
If you want to have the exact number for you here, I'll pull it up for you live on the show. This is great radio. I know everybody's super into this right now. But like when I hear this stat like EPA talked about on your station, and people like you guys get so caught up in the word expected. Like it just stands out to you like it's like stabbing you in the freaking eye.
What's so great about sports is it's unexpected. It's not quantifiable. There are unexpected things. You don't show up to watch what's expected. You show up to a sporting event.
But nobody's
you tune into a sporting event to see the unexpected.
How to watch the game. We are trying to quantify the game.
But it's being told, well, I know you think you saw this, but the numbers actually say you saw that. I know what I saw.
Because you're smarter than everybody else. The 2003 Patriots were 16th in EPA, middle of the pack.
What year?
2003.
Okay.
The 2004 Patriots, let's see. I'm trying to use my finger here. It's not as easy as I was wanting it to be. The 2004 Patriots, which I think were a little bit better offensively than 2003.
That was a Corey Dillon team.
Were 6th. So good team.
What were the Peyton Manning Colts?
Oh, like off the charts first.
Right. Okay. So but
the Peyton Manning Colts were a better offense.
Who was in the Super Bowl?
But they were a better offense.
Who was in the Super Bowl?
But it's what do you mean who's in this?
Was in?
It's a whole different side of the ball. Like the Patriots defense was much better. Like if you look at the Patriots defense in 2004, I'm sure that they're very, very good in EPA. They were 7th in EPA on defense that year. Baltimore was number 1. So like you can't just say who's in the Super Bowl. Like there's a whole other phase of the game. Like we're just measuring offense. Like the 2007 Patriots are the number 1 team in DVOA in the history of DVOA. I'm pretty sure.
That sounds right.
So like. I digress.
All right.
The caller got us on this tangent. All right, so don't blame us. Eldred is this Eldred? What's up, Eldred? Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Hey, Alex.
Hey,
Evan. Man, I love to hear y'all argue. That's better than Paul and Big Head. I love that. But my question is the offensive line, and then this rumor that keeps going around about Thibodeau coming to the Patriots. I'm like, do every player rumor to come to us no matter what? And what we doing? And I really have Wilson at Thibodeau, that guy for the Giants that he drafted a couple years ago, because they got Adu Carter and they got Burns.
Kayvon Thibodeau.
And
the defensive line. I was thinking on offense. Okay.
Yeah, defensive line. Yeah. So did y'all hear that rumor? Do y'all think it's just a rumor or possibility? According to Pat Chat, that's what they talking about.
Nice. Thanks for the call, Eldred. Yes. So Kayvon Thibodeau in New York, did they give him a contract or not? I always get this confused. I'm sorry. I don't think they gave him a contract yet. He's recently drafted in the first round, hasn't fully lived up to it. They now have Abdul Carter, who they just drafted, and they have Brian Burns, who they traded for. So they have three starting edge rushers, essentially, on the team. Kayvon Thibodeau, I want to say, is still on his rookie contract.
He is. They picked up his 5th-year option.
So, in theory, he's tradable. Like, he's a possible trade candidate. They picked up his 5th-year option.
So he's going into the year. He's Cole Strange's draft. So he's
going into his 4th year. So he has 2 more years to keep in control. Most of the time, this year, it would be really next offseason that they would probably trade him. But it's an option. He's definitely more of a hybrid edge. Like, he's definitely more of a hand up, hand down kind of edge defender, doing a little bit of both and really outside the tackle type of player. Longer, if I'm not mistaken, kind of one of those types of builds. Has a lot of traits. Never really put it together in college or the pros, though. Like, he's never been a huge producer. He's always just been kind of a traits-based type of player. I wouldn't hate it. Like, they need somebody young and somebody developmental at that spot. I think we're both in the camp of probably drafting, looking at that spot as a draftable thing coming up here. So I wouldn't hate them being in on that. Like, I'm not giving up the farm for him, but I wouldn't hate.
Right, if he's available, they should make the call. But I wouldn't expect anything to be imminent there. I also think it's you want the Giants of all teams should know the value in having a deep pass rush, and 3 starting caliber players at that position is not necessarily a problem.
It does help that Abdul Carter is so versatile. Like, Abdul Carter can play inline, he can play off the ball, he can play on the edge, Micah Parsons type. So that does help. He's not as long as I remember, 6'4", 254, 33 and an 1/8-inch arm. So a little bit shorter, a little bit more chiseled or cut off than I thought. But good athlete, good traits. Just hasn't really put it all together with the Giants. I'd say, like, on the radar, like somebody that if he does come available more aggressively, I wouldn't be. If they made that trade, I wouldn't hate it, depending on the return, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good player. I wouldn't be against them adding him. I just don't think the Giants are going to be in a rush to give him up.
All right, Ron is in Alabama. What's up, Ron?
Oh, wow. I'm actually on air. Great.
Yes.
Yes, you are.
So I have a statement. I think we all can agree that the quarterback is better than in 2021. The weapons are better than we had in 2021. The difference now is, we have Josh McDaniel, but I don't know the difference in the offensive line. Can you go over kind of the offensive line in 2021 how that affected that season to go on to 9 or 10 wins with Mac Jones?
Yeah.
And maybe talk about that a little bit, and I'll get off there.
Yeah, sure thing, Ron. Thanks for the call. McDaniels was here in 21 too, but that's not here nor there.
So it was David Andrews at center, Shaq Mason at guard, Ted Karras at left guard, Isaiah Wynn at one tackle, and then the other tackle rotated. Trent Brown played 10 games, and then wait, hang on. David, I sorted by snaps on PFF to make sure I got the right group. David Andrews started every game at center. Shaq Mason played 16 at guard. At
right guard. I'll help you out.
Okay. Andrew Shaq and Ted Karras was the interior. Isaiah Wynn played one guard spot. Oh, I should be going by snaps. Left tackle was Isaiah Wynn. Left guard was
confused you over there.
Left guard was Ted Karras with some Mike Onwenu. Center was David Andrews.
It was
right
Wynn,
guard
Karras,
was Shaq
Andrew,
Mason.
Brown.
Yeah, well, Trent Brown and Mike Onwenu kind of split at right tackle.
Yeah, so what I remember of that line, because I was a big Teddy K fan, still am, Onwenu started the season at right guard, or left guard, excuse me.
Yeah.
And it did not go well. He did not play particularly well at left guard. But there was, obviously, after his rookie season, there was just a ton of hope, and everyone figured he had a bright future. So they played him at left guard, and it was semi-controversial that Ted Karras replaced him in the starting lineup at left guard. But for whatever reason, first 6 to 8 games of the season in 2021, it was a little bit rocky. When it wasn't playing particularly well, Wynn had his issues. Right tackle was not solidified necessarily either, with a little bit on Onwenu, a little bit of Brown. And then they put Ted Karras in the starting lineup at left guard, and for whatever reason, it kind of all came together from there. And they were pretty solid for most of that season on the offensive line. Now, they had Carmen Brasillo was the offensive line coach, good offensive line coach. Josh McDaniels was the offensive coordinator, good offensive coordinator. But Ted Karras, man, he came in and he really steadied that ship. Their line was kind of projecting more closer to what we saw in maybe not quite 23, 24 bad, but 22 rough, that sort of projection. And then they ended up steadying out and ranking pretty well for the entire season, I want to say. And a big part of that was Ted Karras. So compared to now, it's hard to say because they haven't played any games, obviously, now. But compared to now, I would say that line was more experienced. You had Andrews, Mason, Karras was more of a veteran player at that point. Trent Brown certainly was. But I don't know if the talent level was all that different. You had a young tackle, just like they have a young tackle at left tackle now. And you had maybe Morgan Moses was a little bit more of a name brand than Trent Brown was at the time, but Brown had the 18 season with the Pats. I don't know. I think the talent level is about the same as it was in 21.
Yeah, it's probably a little more surety in 2021, right? You're going to have at least one, if not two, rookies starting this year. So there's unknowns that come with that. But the overall talent level, I'd agree, is about the same.
So they've ended up finishing that season 11th in pass block win rate. So pretty good. 11th in pass block win rate and 16th in run blocking win rate. So if that's this year,
that'd be great.
Golden.
That's an amazing
season.
That's middle of the pack. That's average. I would take an average offensive line. Like they still need to be better long term, but we knew they weren't going to fix everything with the offensive line this year.
Yeah. That line ended up being pretty solid in 21. It ended up that way.
I'd be curious what those numbers are. I don't know. I don't think you can filter it this way, but like just second half of the year once Karras came in. Because they're probably a top 10 line in football once Karras came in.
It was a weird thing, and sometimes you just talk about like the mixes of offensive line. It's a 5-man unit,
right?
And for some reason that mix just worked better for whatever reason it was. I don't know, but it just did. Mark is in Connecticut. What's up, Mark?
Hey guys, how you doing today? You guys staying cool?
Yes.
Trying.
So I think I have a good question for you guys, and I mean no disrespect to the players, because I love the players, but 18-week season, if we go to that, why do we need to add another bye week? I mean, they only play once a week. It's not like, we're talking baseball where they play almost every day. Same thing with basketball, other sports like that. So I just have that kind of question, why we needed to think that we need an extra bye week if we do go to an 18-week season. And love you guys. Hope you guys have a great rest of the week.
Thanks, Mark. So I think it's twofold. One, just as we don't play, obviously.
Right.
But just as people that work in it, we're at least close enough to it to understand it's a grind. It's a long grind.
It's a grind for them. We could get by without a second bye week.
Yeah,
they
of course.
can't.
But it's a long grind just witnessing it. For, almost as like a firsthand account. We're around it. We see it. Physically, it's extremely taxing. The Patriots the last couple of years have had really late bye weeks.
And they will again this year.
And it's long. It's a haul. Because when you really think about it, like we were talking about earlier about the whole offseason, like they start at the end of July. And if you don't have a bye until week 14, there's really no break from like August to that bye week.
It's just sort of that one weekend, but that one weekend is roster cuts, so you're not exactly relaxed.
Yeah, so it's a grind. That's one thing. It's totally fair to categorize it as that.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is that the league is going to have to give up a little something to get something here.
Yeah.
And if that's the concession, we get a full another week of games and we get all of that payout, then the players are going to want something in return. Now, they're not going to get a lot because it's the NFLPA notoriously gets railroaded by the owners.
I also think it's just good for the league to have a second bye week. I don't think that's just for the players. You've been harping on the NBA calendar being too long because all these players are getting hurt.
It's not at all a green teamer take. It has nothing to do with the Celtics. Injuries.
Fair. But, you were saying it after Halliburton. But no, you don't want guys getting hurt. That's bad for the league if guys are getting hurt. So another week to recover and rest. They didn't add a bye week when they went 14 to 16 games. They didn't add a bye week when they went 16 to 17. So the one bye week was designed for 14 weeks. You've now almost added like another third onto that.
Yeah.
So, having another week to rest and recover, it's not just about the players wanting that so they can go on vacation. I think it would benefit the league because with the longer season, you're going to have more injuries. You don't want that. Give these guys an extra week to rest up in the season and get right. That's the main reason. If I'm the league, I want a second bye week.
That's a great point.
And it's not like
it's to have the best product out on the field.
And you know what a second bye week also gives you? So if you go to 18 games, right, and you have one bye week, you have 19 weeks. You know what happens if you go to 18 games and 2 bye weeks? You have 20 weeks. That's a whole other week you can sell ads and sell tickets, and you're getting talked about nonstop on TV and radio and the internet. Like, of course the league wants another week. Of course they do. That should be the biggest win-win. A second bye week with 18 games, 20 weeks is a win for the players. It's a win for the league. There is zero reason for that not to happen. Zero reason for it. And if you do that, you can probably go back to the bye week after the international game, which means you can schedule more international games, which is not good for the players, but something that the league can do that they want to do.
It's all good points. All right. Tim is in Boston. What's up, Tim?
Hey guys, I'm not trying to claim any authority on the matter, but like as part of my job, I build and interpret like a lot of analytical models. I have a degree in math and data science, so I wanted to weigh in on this analytics debate. Models are really good at like pattern detection, determining correlation, and I think Alex, you had a really good example. Like if a model says that this corner has a really bad EPA against when targeted on go balls, like that's a fact, that's indisputable, that's correlation. But what it doesn't tell you is the causation. Like, you can't claim that the performance is bad because it's go balls. You know, if he just went against Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, that's the causation. But the model can't tell you that. So, like, if Drake May has a 10% higher completion percentage when he wears blue socks rather than white, no analyst is going to claim that it's because of the socks and just, you know, put him in blue socks the whole time. So, like, the models can give you that correlation, but any analyst worth their salt knows you have to go and check for causation, and that's not something that models can provide to you.
Yeah, it's a good point, Tim. And thanks for the call. This is the difference between somebody like me who just digests the stats and people like Tim who actually create stats.
Well, so, and this has been my case. I think maybe the take that I have has kind of been skewed. I understand there are people using it correctly. I think a lot of people are using it correctly or behind closed doors because it's a lot easier to use correctly when you don't have to generate a take out of it.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people who, if you're using it and you also know football, fine. I think there are people who use it in place of knowing football, and that's what bothers me.
Fair enough. All right, one last email here, and I like this email.
I love the socks example. There's some like famous baseball one where this one player was like elite. I don't remember exactly who it was. This was like a while ago. This one player was like unbelievable on Tuesdays. He was like elite on Tuesdays. And so there was like this whole push, bat him clean up on Tuesdays. And it was just like, for whatever reason that day, they kept facing sucky pitching.
There you go. All right. This is from Dylan. He emails in and he says, Evan, I'm with you. I don't care about all the Patriots, Bulls, Yankees fans. Kick rocks. As a Boston sports fan, the Celtics are all I want to talk about right now. Haters gonna hate. My very underrated, not going to happen move going forward is Stephon Castle, a great two-way player that will fit into the Celtics system, and the Spurs are looking to have one too many shooting guards. Also, the backcourt would be called White Castle. It doesn't get better than that.
I do like that.
So Stephon Castle, we've seen that
Derek
trade.
and Stephon go to White Castle?
We've seen that trade proposal out there, but unfortunately the trade proposal is something that, to me, as a Celtics fan, is off the table, which is trading Jaylen Brown. It's Jaylen Brown for the number 2 overall pick and Stephon Castle and some other pieces from San Antonio coming back to Boston. But our takes on the Celtics moves...
We'll give you this. There's a little update here that I think you're going to be disappointed by. God. It's not trading Jaylen Brown. I guess Shams said on McAfee that
I'm in a fight with Shams right now.
The Celtics may look to flip Anthony Simons.
Okay, so
which makes some sense. I know you like Simons. I like Simons. I also
do.
Wouldn't hate if they flip him, but
I have a beef with Shams, and this isn't where I wanted to go with this, but it's where we're going.
No, we said we were going to do draft talk. You have to make this quick.
I have a beef with Shams. I understand that you are trying to sell, just like we're trying to sell this show. You're trying to stir up drama. We don't do that, but that's what you're trying to do. And I get it. You get paid to do that. When you say that the Celtics are taking calls on all players and you don't put names to the players that they're taking calls on, that is infuriating. Like, are they actually seriously taking calls on Jaylen Brown and Derek White or not? Well, but tell me that. Don't sit there and tell me yesterday, before Porzingis gets dealt, that they're listening to calls on all their players when we all know that Porzingis is getting traded. Just say it's Porzingis. They're trade Porzingis.
No, but we do this all the time in football where, like, you know, the team's taking calls on this player, but they're never really going to trade him. They're just looking to see if somebody gets really stupid.
That,
I would want them taking calls on Jaylen Brown. What if the Nuggets call and offer Jokic?
Don't give it.
What if the Nuggets call and offer Jokic?
Don't give the take if you're not going to put a name to it, because all you're doing
all players?
You're just driving us all crazy.
This is a weird take from you. All players implies all players. Why do you need a name? You want them to list the entire roster?
No, because I don't.
If it's all players, it's all players.
Because I don't think the Celtics are in any serious way considering trading Jaylen Brown.
So you just think he
Derek
lied,
White.
basically?
I don't think he lied. I think that he's stretching the truth to strum up drama because it's more interesting for the show and more
But
interesting
if they're
for ESPN.
taking calls on all players, they're taking calls on all players. He doesn't say how seriously they're taking those calls.
I think that we're telling half truth.
We say this all the time. You pick up the phone and listen. You might hang up and laugh.
Yes, but there's a huge difference between taking calls on Sam Hauser and taking calls on Jaylen Brown. So as an insider, I need to know what who are we talking about here? Like, I think it's
right.
very
But we did this with the third overall pick. We did this with third overall pick 2 years ago. You take the call. If somebody's going to get dumb, you take the call. You might laugh and hang up, but you take the call.
So
that's just being a good GM. And Brad Stevens is a good GM.
On the moves they've actually made, really quickly, with Porzingis and Drew Holiday, a necessary evil. Now, I'm not sitting here to tell you that it's a good thing for the Celtics that they had to make these moves. They got worse. We all know that.
And they had to do it.
But at the same time, they had to do it. And I think the one big thing that needs to be said, because I think a lot of people are chalking this up to just taxpayer savers, saving money on the repeater tax, and it's more money in Bill Chisholm's pocket. No, the restrictions of the second apron on what you can do from a roster building standpoint are substantial.
Right. They actually limit your ability to assign free agents, what you can do in trades.
Right.
Like it's not
and
simply
draft picks.
saving
It freezes
money.
your draft picks.
It freezes your draft picks.
Which is huge. The biggest thing that getting out of the second apron does is it allows you to aggregate salaries and trades, which is extremely important because now you can trade, in theory, 3 players for 1 player.
Right.
So now it puts the Celtics back into those conversations to trade for a star, which they could not do before unless they match the salary 1 in, 1 out. So essentially you would have had to have traded. I'm not saying they're going to trade for him. Let's say Giannis says, I want to come to Boston. And that he's just, get me to the Celtics. That's his mindset. You would have had to have traded Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum for Giannis because you only could be 1 in, 1 out. Now you could aggregate salaries. So Anthony Simmons, who's making $27 million on an expiring contract, you could put him and Niang and Hauser and package all of these players together to get to the $60 million that Giannis is owed. When you're over the second apron, you couldn't do that. So in theory, this puts the Celtics back in play to make major moves. And that's where they needed to be.
What do you want to see them do in the draft tonight?
I know that there's rumors that they might move up into the lottery. I don't think they're going to be able to get up there.
If you could flip Hauser to get into the late lottery, I would do that.
Yeah, I would do it too. They have those 2 picks.
Or Simons. If you could flip, because those guys to me are redundant. I know they play different positions, but that's your bench spark shooter guy, right? Not a lot of defense, but is going to put the ball in the basket. If you can flip one of those guys to get into the mid lottery and ideally at a big, which is what I would like to see them do, especially because we don't know what Luke Cornett's future is. That's what I want. I don't like Ryan Kalkbrenner. I don't like Creighton. He makes a lot of sense for the Celtics. I'd probably come around.
They also need a wing because Tatum is not coming back this season, I don't think, and they're going to need depth at that position.
I don't want them to have this narrow focus. We've talked about this, like the Brady off when Brady tore his ACL and they kind of reset around him. I don't want them to have this narrow focus, though, of these are the moves we need to make to plan without Tatum. I want them to bring guys in that when Tatum comes back, this guy's going to complement Tatum really well. I would honestly rather that be the preference. I'd rather they build for 27, 28, 29, 30 than just 26.
Well, that's why I like Simons, because I think Simons is just...
Simons does both.
He's a volume scorer. He's a microwave. He's a bucket getter. And you just put him out there, and this next season, it makes him more watchable, frankly, as a fan. But also, if he's around in the long term, he's another guy, kind of like Porzingis, who could just drop 30.
Well, I think if you flip Hauser, right, and move up in the draft, it would be, Peyton Pritchard and Anthony Simons as your backcourt on your second unit.
Yeah.
That plays. That would be a lot of fun.
Well, that's your Celtics minute, but I want to stress, because I see it a lot about that this is just about cutting taxpayer dollars, and I mean NBA taxpayer.
Do you think
this is the second apron's a death sentence?
Let me ask you
don't
this,
want to be in the second apron.
before we wrap it up, because I think there was a report sort of along these lines recently, like the NFL was looking at the NBA's salary cap structure.
It's a joke.
Do you think it would ever come to the NFL?
I hope not. I think that this is going to ruin the NBA. I've had this take off the air with you. I know it's a Celtics homer take, but I really strongly believe it. I think the apron system is going to ruin the NBA. I think it's horrible for the league. I understand that you're trying to make all 30 teams relevant and spread the talent around. But what I think you're doing is you're actually going to dilute the entire product.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to have any great teams anymore. Everybody's just going to kind of be, no offense, Indiana and Oklahoma City, who I think Oklahoma City is probably closer to that great echelon. Maybe they get there eventually. But I think you're just going to have a lot of like good, not great across the league. And I would much rather watch heavyweights than watch that. So I think that's going to be a big problem for the league. Before we go, based right here in New England, Brent Workwear makes work boots and apparel that are built for the job site. Their gear is comfortable, durable, and named after the real workers in the trades that help design them. You can even try Brent out on the job. And if it doesn't blow you away, they let you send it back. Save $10 on your first order at brentworkwear.com/Pats or with coupon code PATS. And hey, Patriots fans, you want to see Toyota's best offers, including those not seen on TV, go to buyatoyota.com. It's Toyota's official website for deals for the official vehicle of the New England Patriots. Toyota, let's go places. NBA draft, NHL draft this week. Not a whole lot going on in Patriot land, so we'll see what happens between this week and next week, but we'll see you guys then.
Bye.
Hey, this is Deuce. Thanks for tuning into the show. If you really want to help us, make sure you like us wherever you get your podcasts, like Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Also, make sure you follow us on the New England Patriots YouTube channel to see this show and everything else that we do here at the Patriots. Thanks a lot.